Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes power of destruction in Highschool DxD Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Lying in a puddle of his own blood and water, a young boy could be seen staring up at the sky. His blue eyes slowly lost their light as blood exited his body from the fist-shaped hole in his chest. Is this how it ends? The boy thought as his blonde hair stuck to his face from the rain that cascaded upon his dying form. I didn't even get to be Hokage. How could it go so wrong so fast? The boy couldn't help but wonder. The day had started off like normal with him waking up, eating breakfast and brushing his teeth. That's when it spiraled out of control. He had been called into the Hokage office along with his fellow graduates and friends. Sakura, his crush, was there as well, looking particularly distraught. It was then that Tsunade, the current Hokage, explained the reason for the girl's current state. Sasuke, his friend, or at least ex-friend, had left Konoha in favor for getting power. The first emotion that Naruto felt upon hearing that was anger, angry at how Sasuke could leave all of them behind. He had everything Naruto wanted in his life. People looked up to him. Girls were interested in him. Hell, even his own sensei favored him. The boy was called a prodigy, and he threw it all away for what? Power. Yes, Sasuke had told them of his dream, no ambition. He wanted to kill his brother, the same brother who had killed off his entire clan in a single night. Naruto couldn't understand how he could always act so grumpy. He had tried his best to be friends with him, something he thought had worked, as despite how he often acted, Naruto knew he enjoyed those times like he did himself. So why was he lying here, in the Valley of the End with a fist-sized hole in his chest? Didn't he see he only wanted to bring him back? So they could continue being Team 7. He had promised Sakura he would bring him back. He chuckled weakly as blood escaped his lips. She would probably be disappointed if she would see him now. Calling him a failure. It was a term often associated with him. Looking back at his life, Naruto couldn't help but agree. They labeled him as a failure of a shinobi, having failed graduation several times. He never let it show, though, how much those words got to him. No, instead he kept on smiling, loudly proclaiming how he would one day become Hokage. How one day they would no longer look at him in disgust or loathing. How it would be replaced with respect and adoration. It truly was a child's fantasy. Now that he thought about it, he coughed up blood as he could feel himself getting more tired the longer he was lying there. Blanking out for short periods of time as he had to put effort into keeping his eyes open. If only, Naruto thought. If only he would have fought back more seriously. If only his sensei had taught him properly, then perhaps he would now be on his way to Konoha, dragging a battered and bruised Sasuke behind him. And if only Sasuke wasn't so obsessed with revenge. But alas, his life had been against him from the start, he realized. With that, he closed his eyes. A bittersweet smile of acceptance graced his face. With that, Uzumaki Naruto, Kyuubi Jinchuriki, son of Uzumaki Kushina and Minato Namikaze, had died. Not too far away, two blurs could be seen traveling through the forest at high speeds. How far away are we packing? Kakashi asked as his lone visible eye focused onto his smaller travel companion. We're close. I can smell blood from here. Pakin replied, its enhanced senses due to him being a dog catching the smell of freshly spilled blood. Nodding grimly, they increased their pace as Kakashi could feel lingering traces of Kyuubi's chakra pass by him. Is this? Kakashi muttered as he looked at the Valley of the End that showed signs of a large battle having been fought. Kakashi, his companion, muttered as it held its paw out towards a small speck lying in the middle of the valley. Oh God, Naruto! Kakashi screamed after focusing on it, and recognizing the blonde hair of his student. Wasting no time, Kakashi jumped down before sprinting over to where one of his students was lying. No! Kakashi repeated, losing composure as he got closer and noticed he wasn't breathing. A fist-sized hole was in his chest from what he recognized as his technique. His hand trembled as he knelt down and moved towards his jugular vein, hoping it wasn't what it looked, despite knowing deep down it was already too late. Come on, Kakashi mumbled as he couldn't feel any pulse. A little bit away, Pakin looked sadly as his summoner did his best to keep himself together while praying to any god out there that what he was seeing wasn't real. Sensei, I'm sorry. A lone tear ran down his visible eye after realizing that it had no use. Naruto, his student, his sensei's legacy, was dead. No longer among the living and killed by none other than his friend, using a jutsu Kakashi had taught him personally. Kakashi, it's no use. Pakin found it surprisingly hard to form the correct words as he looked sadly at the corpse of the blonde. He had so much potential. Pakin had seen so himself as he had defeated the One-Tails. For someone so young to die by his own signature technique, Pakin could already feel the self-loathing that started to develop inside of Kakashi. It's best if we bring him to Konoha so he could at least get a proper burial. Kakashi didn't reply. Instead, he was focused on the smile his dead student held. He recognized the smile, having it seen on so many older shinobi who either had family members of them lose their lives or were on the doorstep to death themselves. It was a smile of acceptance. Acceptance that they were gone, that they were about to die and didn't fight it a single bit. To see such a smile on his student was simply disheartening. Finally, Kakashi moved the dead body of his student in his arms before standing up. Pakin, let's head back. The retrieval has been Kakashi had to swallow. A failure. A funeral was held later that same week. One that was attended by everyone that knew him, including members of his graduating class. Kakashi had seen both Tsunade and Jiraiya crying as the coffin was lowered into the ground. Kakashi still remembered the look the Hokage had when she saw him enter her office, carrying the dead body of Naruto. She had stared blankly at it before Kakashi had excused himself after noticing she was doing her best not to cry. The woman had closed herself in her office for the rest of the day. He remembered how he had stumbled upon Jiraiya seemingly drinking himself to death in one of the many bars. Kakashi could honestly say the man had never seemed older than he did at that exact moment. Then were all his friends who were informed of Naruto's death shortly after they got out of the hospital. Even now he could see Hinata's look of disbelief as she received the news. Tsunade had shortly thereafter declared Uchiha Sasuke a ranked missing nin with a very sizable bounty, dead or alive. In an unknown place 10 holograms could be seen, each standing on what appeared to be a finger of a massive demonic-looking statue. Zetsu, why have you called us all here for? A man spoke up as purple-ringed eyes looked at the plant-like man. We have important news to report. Uzumaki Naruto the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is dead. Silence. No one said a thing as they processed the info and looked at their leader, who signaled for Zetsu to continue. Here as almost mocking grin formed as the plant man's eyes locked upon Itachi's figure. It was reported he has been killed by none other than Uchiha Sasuke, Itachi's younger brother, after he tried to stop him from going to Orochimaru. Everyone's eyes locked on Itachi, who had closed his eyes as he heard what Zetsu told them. But that's not all. Uchiha Sasuke has been marked as an A-rank missing nin by Konoha, wanted dead or alive. One could almost feel the amusement Zetsu held as all the attention was on Uchiha Kinslayer. TCH, should have gotten rid of that brat. Deidara spoke up, not wasting a chance to badmouth any Uchiha. Now we have to wait several years for the Kyuubi to reform. Itachi said nothing. This is an unfortunate setback. While we weren't ready to seal the beast just yet, it is unknown how long it will take for the Bijou to reform, with reports each varying in time. For now, I want Zetsu to keep gathering information while keeping an eye out for any large concentrations of chakra. Kakuzu, Haiden, both of you keep collecting funds we will be needing soon. The rest of you will head out to Odogekyo, which I heard was Orochimaru's own village. I want you to go there and turn that village into a crater while keeping an eye out for any information regarding the snake. He's been a thorn in our sides for too long, and even now is causing us trouble. Dismissed. One by one the holograms disappeared till only one was remaining. Red, glowing eyes staring upwards, which held a small amount of regret that his plan for the Uchiha clan's name to be cleared has backfired. Foolish little brother, was all he said before he too vanished, leaving behind an empty cave. The sound of a baby crying was heard, coming from one of the many rooms the hospital held in the underworld. A middle-aged man with black hair could be seen looking peacefully at the blonde-haired woman lying in bed. Holding in her arms was a small baby who had a small amount of blonde hair on his head. As the baby opened his eyes, both male and female took note of his cerulean blue eyes that matched the woman that was holding him. So adorable, the woman said as she let the baby play with one of her fingers. What do you think, Zikram-kun? She looked at the black-haired male. I think it's a shame he looks almost identical to you. He joked before answering seriously upon noticing the woman's dangerous look. I mean, he's indeed very cute. He answered nervously. You want to hold him? She asked him. Does little Naruto-kun want to see its daddy? She small baby seemed to laugh as his small arms made grabbing motions towards the man who approached and gently took him out of her arm. He truly looks a lot like you, the man said with a smile. I wonder which power he inherits. Your flames or my power of destruction. We'll have to wait till he's older, the woman said as she carefully sat up. Despite being a phoenix and capable of healing her wounds quickly, she still felt the phantom pains of having given birth. Usually children show their powers around their 7 or 8 years old. The door to their room was suddenly opened as both parents looked at who entered. Zeoticus, Venilana. Zikram greeted the two. Lord Bale, you too, Lady Riette? Their eyes landed on the small bundle Zikram was holding. Is that Venilana said as she looked at her ancestor. Indeed, this is Naruto Bale. Both Venilana and Zeoticus took a few steps closer and looked at the small baby. Naruto, strange name, Venilana said to Riette as she noticed he had the same hair color and eyes. He looks a lot like you. It means Maelstrom, which seems fitting as we can already see his potential. What brings you here? Aside from visiting you and little Naruto-kun here, we're checking up ourselves. Venilana placed her hand on her stomach, causing the other two adults to understand she meant. The pair left their room shortly thereafter, allowing both parents to spend time with their child. At the end of the day, Riette was allowed to leave the hospital after several checkups. The following days it was busy at the Bale mansion as visitors from all sorts of devil houses came by to congratulate both Lord Bale and Riette on the birth of their son. A few devils even tried to make several marriage contracts but were quickly shot down the moment Riette heard of those, telling Zikram she wants her son to find someone to love on his own and refusing any offer that was made. No one dared to argue with the woman who could burn even high-class devils with a single touch. They weren't that stupid. In a destroyed field, one of the many acres of land the Bale clan owned. Naruto could be seen standing. He was currently 13 years old and had grown a lot over the years. His blonde hair had grown both spiky and longer to the point he had a few bangs that were covering his eyes. He was both well built and tall for his age, being an inch or two taller than his good friends, Sirzechs and Ajuka. Sirzechs was the son of Lord and Lady Gremory. Whereas he looked a lot like his mother, Sirzechs on the other hand was almost a copy of his father with the exception of his face which was more towards Lady Venelana's shape. Sirzechs was a couple months younger than he was, though that didn't stop them from becoming good friends the moment their parents had introduced them to one another. Sirzechs had also introduced him to Ajuka, who was one of his friends. He was a young boy with green hair which he preferred slicked back and light blue eyes several shades lighter than his own. Despite his young age he was smart, and Naruto wasn't ashamed to admit that when it came to strategy games or anything the like he would not stand a chance. He was by no means stupid, but Ajuka was just another level of smart. Something interesting had happened to him, something that made him a hot topic to talk about throughout the underworld. Unlike his parents, who both held one of Underworld's most powerful abilities, those being the Bale's power of destruction and the Phoenix's flames, his powers had mutated much to their shock. The first time he unlocked his power was with his parents when he was just past 8 years old. They were in an empty field much like the one he was standing in now before they instructed him to search deep within himself. He had done what they had asked of him, but neither were expecting the results. The first thing that happened was the incredible amount of power he had released. It was like a dam had been broken. It was so much and so potent everyone in the surrounding area could feel it. Soon thereafter a set of gasps were heard as both Seacrum Bale and Riet looked at their son who stood before him. His arms were covered in flames, but what caught their attention was the color of the flames. They were dark red and crackled with what appeared to dark crimson-colored sparks which destroyed anything it touched. His parents had to take a few steps back from the immense heat that came from the flames covering his arms. His father quickly recognized the sparks as being his clan's ability, but was still confused regarding the color of his flames. A glance towards Riet showed she was as surprised as he was, as it looked like some sort of mutation of both their powers. They simultaneously thought. They had asked him to call his power back before immediately bringing him to someone with more understanding on the matter. Once there, their speculations were confirmed that it was indeed a mutation between Phoenix and Bale powers, and aptly named it Flames of Destruction. Of course, once news came out that the current Bale heir had an entire new bloodline, a combination between two of Underworld's most wanted powers, they flocked to him to catch a glimpse of said power. The fact that it could apparently be passed down to any future children he might have was enough for their greed to come to the surface. Luckily for Naruto though, his father made sure they all stayed away as he wasn't used to the attention on him. They all listened. After all, nobody wishes to be on bad terms with the Bale clan, the one clan which held the rank of Great King due to having the purest blood. Back with Naruto, the boy could be seen forming dozens of magic circles each second. After realizing that he had incredible reserves for his age, he had started early on with several exercises to help him control it. One such exercise was the one he was doing now. It helped both increase his control over his power, while simultaneously helps increasing his casting speed. Some had already began calling Sirzechs, Ajuka and himself the future of the devil race, as each had shown a high degree of expertise over their powers despite their young age. Not to mention that each of them had above normal amounts of demonic energy compared to devils their own age or older. Releasing a sigh, Naruto stopped what he was doing, allowing the remaining magic circle to shoot a concentrated beam of crimson flames straight down, which expanded upon coming in contact with the ground. Naruto had to squint his eyes as the light it gave off was too much even for him. As it died off, Naruto looked at the scorched area that reached close to 50 foot in diameter. Pretty good for a single attack. Naruto nodded to himself in satisfaction before he turned around and calmly made his way back home. Hopefully his father had something he could do. "To-sama." Naruto greeted his father as he entered the mansion before noticing the other people in the room. "Naruto-kun," his father returned his greeting. "Let me introduce you to Lord and Lady Citri." He motioned over to the couple standing near him. Naruto looked at the black-haired man and woman who both had violet eyes like his father had. "Nice to meet you." Naruto bowed his head in respect before turning his head slightly to the right where a young girl could be seen standing. She had long black hair set in twin tails with a pair of violet eyes that looked at him with barely hidden curiosity. "Who's this?" he asked the adults in the room. "That's our daughter, Seraphol." Lady Citri spoke up. "Come on, Sarah-chan, say hi." Slowly the young girl stepped towards him. Her eyes were focused somewhere else, missing the raised eyebrow Naruto had as he watched her stop in front of him. Nice to meet you, Narutan." She shyly introduced herself, still not looking at him. Naruto stared at her outstretched hand for a moment before accepting it. "Nice to meet you as well, Seraphol." He then looked at his father. "You know where Ka-san is?" He refrained from using the more affectionate suffix in front of the guest. While he never said it out loud, Naruto enjoyed spending time with his mother more than his father. He didn't hate him or anything, but he felt more connected with his mother compared to his father. "She should be in the library, at least that's what she told me." Of course, his parents had noticed this even without him having voiced so, but neither made any effort to change him. If he preferred spending time with his mother over his father, they weren't going to stop him. I see, I'll be going then. He bowed once more before walking off to find his mother. Such a well-mannered kid, Lord Citri commented as they watched his form disappear from their eyes. Zekrom chuckled lightly, glad they had beaten proper manners into him early on, or who knows how he might have acted. Naruto released a tired sigh as he entered his bedroom and let his gaze wander around. It was big, way bigger than it should be for being just a bedroom. Then again, most devils owned ridiculously large homes. Initially he was confused why someone would need a house that big when most devil families were made up from 2 to 3 members. He came to realize that most of the spare rooms belonged to staff, which was mostly made up from maids. He dragged his feet towards the bed before allowing his body to fall onto it. Despite his aching muscles having already healed due to the phoenix blood in him, he was still tired despite not looking anything like it. He closed his eyes and before he knew it, he was already asleep. Blue eyes fluttered open before staring around in confusion. Already morning? Naruto said to himself before he sat up, only for him to frown as he appeared to be in some sort of sewer. Standing up, he noticed just how big the sewer he found himself was. Narrowing his eyes, he spotted a bright light up ahead. Looking behind him, it was the opposite, as he couldn't see a thing, so with a shrug he started walking towards the light. He arrived in what appeared to be an even bigger room, if that was even possible. A large cage was before him, except it was completely empty. He took a few steps closer to the golden bars, wondering where he was and what sort of animal this cage before him was meant for. A sudden light that appeared in the middle of the empty cage caused Naruto to jump back, his arms already coated in crimson-colored flames in preparation for what was to come. As the light died down, Naruto's eyebrows rose as he stared at what looked like an older version of himself, except weaker. He couldn't sense any demonic energy from the man before him. And what was with the look on the man's face? He was looking at him with an expression befitting one of sadness. Who? Naruto looked the older blonde over. He had blonde, spiky hair more wild than his own. He did note that it was the same shade as his mother's hair and his own. He had a pair of jaw-length bangs and piercing blue eyes so much like himself. He wore a green jacket with over it what he recognized as a white haori which had a flame motif. Finishing it off was the headband the man had around his forehead, which held a strange symbol he couldn't quite recognize. "Who are you?" he asked warily of the man in front of him. Despite not sensing any demonic or holy energy from him, Naruto could tell the man was still dangerous. Instead of answering him, the blonde man slowly made his way over to him. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he increased the output of his flames the closer he got while carefully stepping back. While he was sure that if he wanted to he could have erased this man from existence, a part of his mind was against it. "Don't move closer," Naruto warned as several magic circles came into existence, floating behind him. Despite his warning, the man didn't listen, seemingly aware of the inner conflict he was having in his mind that stopped him from acting till he stood a mere feet away from him. "Do something!" Naruto could hear himself screaming in his mind. "Fight him! Kill him! Do anything!" Yet, despite his mind warning him, he was powerless for some reason, and he didn't like it any bit, as this man could strike him down without any effort if he wished to. He was surprised, however, as instead of striking him down, the man brought him in a hug. A hug that was strangely comforting for some reason. His arms hung limply to the side, the fire having dissipated the second the man had embraced him. Why? Why does this feel good? He didn't even know this man. "Sorry," he heard him mutter. "Sorry for what?" This wasn't making any sense. "I'm sorry for putting such a burden on you. If only I knew this was going to happen, I would never have sealed the Kyuubi in my own son." "Hold on. Son? Kyuubi?" While he looked a lot like him, last time he checked his father had black hair and violet eyes, whereas his mother looked more like the person in front of him. And what was this about sealing a Kyuubi? Was that the reason this cage was here? He had heard of Kyuubi Yukai, the strongest of their race, but never of sealing one in a child. "I'm sorry." He pushed the man away. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else. My father is Zekrom Bale, current leader of the Bale clan, and I can tell you he looks nothing like you." The man frowned. I know. Was your father in your life before this one?" Naruto was sure his eyebrows would have receded into his hairline if they could. "Previous life, like reincarnation and such?" "I've seen it all, your previous life. From the moment you were born till you died from my place here inside you." "Phrasing," Naruto muttered. "Though I can't say I really was a father to you, can I? Especially not compared to this other man." Oh, Minato had indeed seen it all and could see the genuine care the man had for his son, which was also his son in some weird way. "Wait. What is your name?" "Oh, he. The man scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. "Namikaze Minato, Yandame Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato." "Fire Shadow?" He looked at the older blonde who didn't reply. He shook his head. "Regardless, Minato, what are you doing here? If what you say is indeed true and I have indeed reincarnated, why are you still here? What are you even?" "I am a small part of my original soul. When I died sealing the Kyuubi and you using the Shiki Fujin, I imprinted a copy of both myself and Kushina in case you ever needed us." He frowned. Unfortunately, it seems Kushina's imprint is no longer here for some reason. His form began to flicker between transparent and solid. "It seems my time is up." "Wait already?" You still haven't explained the rest. What does this all mean? Where are you from and how does this affect me? Instead of replying, the man brought him in one more hug before he took a few steps back. Despite you no longer being my son, I want you to know that I'm proud of you, and once more I'm sorry, Naruto. With that being said, the man slowly became more and more transparent before he was gone. Naruto stared at the spot the blonde had previously occupied with mixed emotions. This had brought up so many questions he honestly wasn't even sure what to do. Naruto groaned lightly as he woke up. Blue eyes staring at the ceiling of the room, not bothered in the slightest from the naked body he could feel pressed against his side. How long had it been? How much time had gone by since he first had met the blonde man deep inside his conscious? That's right, 4 years since that day, and he was not any smarter when it came to said topic. The first thing he had done the next day when he was awake was asking his parents if either were familiar with the symbol the man wore on the headband around his head. Unfortunately, either of his parents had the slightest clue, and when asked about it he told them it came to him in a dream as to not raise any suspicion. There was also that man's name, Minato Namikaze. He had searched through the massive library for any hints regarding said name only to come up with nothing. While there were some Minatos, none matched the description of the one he had met in his mind or wherever it exactly was. So, after numerous failures to gain any information, Naruto had given up and instead using the time to train more vigorously than he did before. His mother was concerned as he had trained himself to the point even his phoenix blood was unable to properly heal him. It had paid off, however, as he was widely known as strongest youth, followed closely behind by his friends Sirzechs and Ajuka, who, like him, were recognized as prodigies when it came to fighting and power. Surprisingly, Sarah Fall had made a name for herself with her unique ice magic compared to the rest of her family, whom were all water users. She had undergone quite the personality change as well. No longer was she the same shy little girl he had first met. Instead, she became more outspoken, yet kept her somewhat childish part of her that could get on his nerves sometimes. Though she seemed not to care, in fact she seemed to do it on purpose whenever he was around, much to his dismay. Morning, Naruto-sama. A woman's voice from his right snapped him out of his memories. Looking at the owner of the voice, he stared right at a pair of green eyes which stared sleepily back. This was also something that had changed about him. After reaching a certain age, puberty started to happen, and with that came hormones. He had did his best to ignore them as much as he was capable of, but eventually, after a certain hard training session, he just couldn't help himself, and woke up the next morning with one of the many maids that worked for his father in his bed. Naked like himself. Of course, with his luck, his mother had to enter his room that exact day after noticing he wasn't awake yet when it was close to noon. To say she was angry was quite the understatement, and chewed him out for a while. Thankfully, his father had managed to calm her down so he could explain that it was bound to happen with how his hormones were acting up, and that it was better he did it with one of their maids instead of some random woman he could have picked up from the streets. So eventually she conceded, which prompted him to sleep with their maids whenever he felt like it, as long as they agreed, of course. While he could go out and probably get a girlfriend or whatever, he wasn't really interested in anyone, much to the dismay of several young women, as Naruto had grown quite handsome over the years, looking more and more like the man he had met in his mind those years ago. His training had given his body a nice amount of muscles, nothing over the top though. His hair was a bit longer than his younger self, yet shorter than Minato had, with less spikes in them. His height had increased to the point that he was just a few inches shorter than his father was, much to his delight. Releasing another sigh, Naruto got out of bed before grabbing some clothes and heading for the bathroom that was attached to his room, cleaning himself before preparing for another day. Hopefully one a bit more interesting than lately, as he had gotten quite bored. Perhaps he could ask Sirzechs for a spar again if he's free. A knock was heard on his door, causing Naruto to look up from the book he was currently enthralled with. It was an interesting book. One that told stories about the early days of devils and angels and how the underworld was formed into what it was today. Come in, he called as the door leading to his room opened. Hello, Naruto-sama. He looked at the owner of the voice, which revealed itself to belong to a young woman with long, dark brown hair. Another one of the many maids that worked for his family. Even from where he was sitting in the dimly lit room, he was able to see the light blush that adorned the woman's cheeks as she averted her eyes after noticing he wasn't wearing a shirt. It allowed her to see his well-developed muscles he had gained and kept over the several decades he had been alive. Naruto flicked a few blonde locks to the side, allowing her to see his piercing blue eyes, ones that had lost a part of their warmth after having experienced loss. The maid frowned for a moment as she remembered that day. That fateful day where he had received the news that had changed him into the person that sat before her. Flashback. What did you call me here for, Tusama? Is Kasan better? Naruto asked as he had hurriedly made his way to his father's office after being asked to get here as soon as he could. His mother had been diagnosed with a very deadly disease a few months ago. It was lethal to devils, but he, along with many others, had speculated she could survive due to her phoenix blood. An emergency, they called it, which seemed to be true as the tension in the room was close to, if not palpable. His father looked at him with a look that held no emotion, no expression except coldness. For a moment he said nothing. Instead he looked his son over. He had grown a lot, from a young boy into a fine adult, even if he was still very young by devil standards. He had gotten taller, standing at 6 feet exact, making him as tall as he himself was. His blonde hair that held an unique spikiness to it still as vibrant as ever. Blue eyes, so much like his mother, stared curiously at him, wondering what he was here for as he had taken a break from training today. Then there was also his power. Zekrom could feel the hairs on his neck stand up from the close proximity he was with his son, who was radiating power despite actively suppressing it. Despite his young age, Zekrom was not stupid. He knew that Naruto's reserves had already surpassed his own, as even he was not able to make others feel so conscious of themselves by being just in the same room as someone. Well, he was, but not in the way his son was able to. With him it was mainly out of fear others had in potentially offending him, or doing something that could hurt their standing in the underworld. Naruto watched as his father stared at him. Unknowingly, he was finding the best possible way to break the news to him while knowing that his reaction wouldn't be nice regardless. Sighing, Zekrom decided that getting straight to the point would be the best in this situation. Your mother. Zekrom noticed a change in his posture when he mentioned her, the person Naruto treasured above everyone else, something that made this all the more painful for him. Naruto-kun, your mother, Riet, is dead. Zekrom closed his eyes, awaiting his reaction. Something which he didn't have to wait long for. CRRK. The temperature in the room quickly rose to unbearable levels as sweat ran down Zekrom's head. What? He heard his son mutter as he released a massive amount of power as cracks formed around the reinforced room. Naruto-kun, he stopped as he noticed his son seemed to mumble something he was unable to properly hear. Impossible. Why, you're lying. She's supposed to be invincible. He looked at his father, hoping that he was joking with him, that he did not just say that his mother, the woman he cared the most about in the world, was no longer among them. Wasn't even there. He shut his eyes tightly as tears trickled down his cheeks. Tears that were worth a fortune to anyone who would have gotten their hands on them in the right situation, but Naruto didn't care as a teleportation circle formed underneath his feet. He didn't even look at his father as he was teleported away. Zekrom sat down in his chair before releasing a tired sigh as he looked at the now destroyed room due to his son releasing his powers. Scorch marks formed on the ground and curtains with some burned to crisps. Large cracks had formed in the wall and the floor, both running through the entire room. He should call someone to fix it when he had time. Out of nowhere, an absolutely massive amount of demonic energy washed over him, causing his heart to skip beating for a split second as his fingers dug into his chest to keep him from collapsing. He was sure he wasn't the only one affected, as it was so potent and filled with hate that no doubt the maids were doing much worse. Following the spike of energy, the air got noticeably warmer to the point he had to open a window lest he be cooked alive. As he opened the window, he looked outside and saw a massive pillar of flames shooting high in the sky. Even from several miles away, he had no squint from the amount of light it gave off. It seems you have truly surpassed me, my son. Zekrom noticed as the amount of power he could feel being released was already higher than his own. I can only hope he calms down, as I'm sure the entire underworld could feel if not see what is happening. Flashback end. After that meeting, the relationship between him and his father had worsened to the point that they rarely spoke to each other. Naruto had even moved his room to a different side of the large mansion. The reason for this was because how his father acted after his mother had died. He acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just lost his wife. It bothered Naruto. It bothered him to the point that they had their first real argument/fight, which only strained their relationship more, to the point that one would think they were more strangers instead of family. It got even worse when his father had tried to introduce some woman from a house he gave no crap about. Naruto had stared at the woman with disdain as she attempted to replace his mother. He cared nothing about her and had let it known verbally, only for his father to apologize to her for his behavior. While some saw his actions as childish, Naruto didn't care. He only knew that he did not like that woman who tried to replace his mother half a decade after she had died. Yes, his father was allowed to date someone else. He didn't expect the man to stay single for the rest of his long life, but that did not mean he was going to like it. His father couldn't do anything aside from scold him for his behavior, as a fight would lean in his favor both due to his higher reserves and unique bloodline. A bloodline which made it so he couldn't threaten to kick him out of the clan, as he would most likely be picked up by the Phoenix due to him having their blood in his veins. And if that didn't work, he could go to any other devil house which would be more than happy to take him, in hopes of incorporating his unique bloodline into their own and thereby elevating their status amongst the underworld for having a perfect mix between Phoenix and Bale with the best of both and then some. Is there something you need? Naruto asked the woman standing in his room. She had been spacing out for the past few minutes, much to his silent amusement. No, I am fine. The woman shook her head, embarrassed at being caught like that, but quickly collected herself. Lord Bale has called for me to inform you that he wishes to speak with you. I see, he muttered as he closed the book he was reading. His slight movement caused the flames of the candles in the room to flicker and change color to crimson, giving the room an eerie glow. Standing up, he walked over to the closet and put on a burnt orange shirt along with a fitting white jacket. Let's go then. He motioned for the woman to lead as he closed the door behind him. As he walked through the hallways next to the maid, his mind drifted off to other thoughts. Ever since he had first met that strange man who looked so much like him, Minato, he had experienced several dreams, borderline nightmares, when he went to sleep. They were about himself, or at least a younger version of himself. He would find himself in a strange place called Konoha, which, as weird as it sounds, didn't exist in any of the history books. There, in that place, people were ninjas or shinobi, whatever he couldn't quite remember. They weren't like ninjas that existed in this day and age, as they were quite the opposite of stealthy. Not to mention that those people there, humans, were capable of using chakra, an energy source exclusive to yokai which allowed them to bend elements to their will, such as spitting out massive fireballs or create large water dragons. While those feats weren't anything special, as the Citri and Phoenix could do those without a sweat, the fact that those were just regular humans was most surprising. Some dreams were about a younger version of himself surviving on the streets, getting spit and cursed at, while in others he would find himself enduring torture no child should have experienced regardless of what they did. It made him realize how evil humans could be, only increasing his dislike for their race. Oddly enough, the dreams and or nightmares would always end with him ending up with him waking up as a young boy no older than 13 would shove an electric-covered fist into his chest, as strange red eyes with black tomos would stare lifelessly as he died. Was that what Minato meant when he spoke about him being reborn? That he had died in that world only to end up here, as heir of the most revered family in the underworld? Would those dreams be his memories then, or was it something completely different? The only person aware that he was experiencing those dreams was his mother, whom he had informed. She was the only one he had told, as they would often just spend time together, where he would tell her about what happened in those dreams as she would run her fingers through his hair. Now that he thought about it, she would always just smile at him, like she knew something that he didn't. Unfortunately, he would never know why she did it, or what those smiles meant, as she was no longer among the living. He was pulled out of his thoughts as they stopped in front of the door leading to his father's office, the woman who escorted him knocking on the door before hearing Zekrum's voice on the other side telling them to enter. The door opened and they both walked in. "I've brought Naruto-sama here, Bale-sama." She bowed her head in respect. "Good, you're dismissed." He waved her away as she closed the door behind her, leaving father and son in the room. "Take a seat." He gestured to the chair that was on the other side of his desk. He looked at it for a moment before, with an almost unnoticeable shrug, walked over and sat down. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, quite rude as he made himself comfortable. "Yes, I did," Zekrum said, not bothered by his greeting as his expression turned serious. "I take it you're aware of the current tensions between the three biblical factions?" Naruto nodded his head. How could he not be? Anywhere he went he noticed the slight actions people made. That's not even to mention the things he would overhear being talked about in secret, or the information that would accidentally leak when he was nearby in an attempt to get in his good graces. There's a possibility of a war breaking out between heaven and the underworld, and surprisingly Grigory. The exact reason I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if it were for some petty reason like most wars are fought by humans. Though I have no idea why the latter would join in, seeing as it should be none of their business. Zekrum allowed a small smile to grace his face as he listened to his son talk. He had quickly come to realize that he wasn't a big fan of humans, mainly because they supported heaven and thereby the biblical god, but he also held no small amount of disgust for the race of warmongering beings. Or so he thought, at least. It was somewhat amusing though for a race of humans to commit acts of atrocity that made even devils think twice. "Is that why you called me here for?" Zekrum shook his head. "No, the reason I called you here is because I'm informing you that in a month the Satans will wage war upon heaven." Naruto allowed one of his eyebrows to rise in response. I, along with other heads of the families, each received a letter which detailed information that the current Satans have officially declared war, so it's no longer just a rumor. I'm telling you to get ready, as devils will be relying on you, just like your friend Sirzechs, who no doubt is having the same conversation with Sirzechs. You two, along with the Juka, are looked up at as a new age for us devils and to bring us to greatness. This war is where you will prove your worth, as you will no doubt be fighting on the front lines. I too will prepare myself, having not fought for a long time. He allowed his power of destruction to spark into existence, which was still as potent as ever. I see. Thank you for informing me. I'll take the month to finish something I'm working on, which will give me quite the advantage for the war. A sadistic smirk made its way onto his face before it was gone. I'll be taking my leave then. Oh, Naruto-kun. Zekrum's voice stopped him just as he was about to leave the room. Yes? He turned his head, annoyed at being stopped, and the familiar way he addressed him. In the letter they're asking if you can help producing more Phoenix tears. The Phoenix family is assigned with making sure there will be enough tears to heal wounded that we will no doubt suffer, and since your tears have the same healing ability, they're asking if you can help. Perhaps. If I can complete what I'm currently working on, I can see if I can help. He shrugged uncaringly. He doubted he had an actual option not to, but the way he phrased it made it seem like he was willing to help. Great, I'll let them know. I'm also informing you that Miriam is expecting a child. He looked at his son, curious as to see his reaction. His eyes turned cold as ice, not betraying anything except immense dislike at the mention of her name. I see. He didn't say anything else as he left the room without looking back, leaving his father to sigh in sadness at his strained relation with his son. He hadn't planned for his current wife to get pregnant this soon. It was hard, very hard for pure-blooded devils to get pregnant. Why? Nobody knew exactly, but it didn't change the fact that it often took several centuries between pregnancies, which is why it came to such a surprise to hear that he was having another child before Naruto would reach his 100th birthday. It also couldn't have happened at a worse time, with war breaking out soon, meaning his wife won't be able to fight. Though it did give him an incentive to win, as otherwise he wouldn't get to see his youngest child. So I take it you've been told of the news as well, any? Sirzechs spoke to the others in a jovial mood. One that didn't fit with the general air of somberness that was in the room. Shortly after his father told him of the news, he was visited by Sirzechs, Ajuka, Seraphal, and Falbium. The latter, who was the newest member to their small group of friends. He was pretty relaxed, borderline lazy, but when you could have a conversation with him, they were always very interesting. Yup. Father informed me just before you all came by. They want my help producing phoenix tears. I told them I'd help if I finish with my own crap. He looked at Sirzechs and Ajuka. Did your parents go over some dull speech about the future of the devils? He asked, curious if only his father did it. He received 2 nods. Yeah, something about proving ourselves right? Correct. What about you, Seraphal? He looked at the only girl in the room, who pouted at him. Mao, I told you to call me Saratan. She grumbled at his refusal to address her in the way she wanted. Naruto looked unamused at her antics, something she quickly picked up on as she got to the point. Well, Kasan and Tusen didn't really say anything specific, they just told me to take care of myself and allies to make sure I survive. Naruto hummed, not really paying attention as he began juggling a small fireball he had formed in his palm, his eyes following it as it bounced in his hands. The others in the room could feel the heat it was generating despite being so small, just proving how powerful his flames are. By the way, Narutan, what are you working on? A technique or something else? The flame died out as Naruto closed his palm, the other members in the room looking at him in interest, making him smirk. Sorry, but it's a secret. I can tell you though that I got the idea from you. He looked at Sirzechs. Me? I wonder if it has something to do with. He saw his friend's eyes lit up. Oh, something like that, huh? Naruto nodded with a smile that was matched by him. Good luck. It took me quite a while, but it's definitely worth it, as you have seen so yourself. The others in the room looked confused about what they were talking about but didn't voice their confusion, instead deciding to wait, as they will no doubt see what they are talking about in the upcoming war. Anyway, is there anything that needs to be discussed? I have personal matters to attend to. He looked at the others. Each of them shook their heads, indicating that he could go. Cool, I'll see you all later or something. He stood up as a teleportation circle formed underneath him, taking him out of the room. Naruto casually walked through the busy crowd that existed out of hundreds of devils. In fact, he walked a bit too calm for the current situation they were facing, as they were all gathered on a large, empty grass field shielded by several powerful barriers. It was time. A month had passed and war had officially started. He could see the nervous expressions of men and women alike as he walked. He was surprised at himself, as instead of fear he felt excitement. Excitement at the prospect of going all out, to finally discover his limits and surpass them while he was at it. He spotted the familiar shade of crimson which belonged to his friend Sirzechs. Accompanying him were their others' friends. Hey, he greeted them lazily with a casual wave as he stopped next to him. As he looked around, he could see the several glances sent their way. For good reason, he mused to himself. When he made his way to his friends, he could easily find them, as both Ajuka and Sirzechs had reserves bigger than anyone here bar his own. It pretty much made them a beacon, which was only amplified as he joined them. Hey Naruto, did you manage to finish what you were trying to achieve? Sirzechs asked him. Naruto looked at him for a moment before a smirk formed. Yep, I completed it 2 weeks ago actually. His answer surprised them. 2 weeks, Sirzechs repeated before his eyes widened and was joined by the others who held similar expressions. Are you telling me that immense spike of demonic energy that could be felt through the underworld was you? Despite trying, he couldn't quite keep the shock out of his voice. How could he not, as it was talked about by everyone? Not to forget that it had rained for 3 days straight following the heatwave that had affected them all. Naruto scoffed. Of course it was me. Who else has enough power with the exception of you and Ajuka? He waved his hand, unconcerned by their looks. Just wait till you see it in action. You can't miss it, he said with pride. They could feel his excitement, and didn't know if they had to be worried for him, since he seemed to be almost looking forward to fighting. Sensing a small, almost unnoticeable spike in energy, he followed it to the source where his father could be seen. Surrounding him was Lord Phoenix, his uncle with blonde hair much like his if not for the slightly darker color he had. Next to him was a person he quickly recognized as Sirzechs' father with crimson hair, which was unique to the Gremory family. He locked eyes with his father. Neither said a thing as they conversed with just their eyes. Don't die. He rolled his eyes. You should be more worried about yourself than others. After all, those old bones of yours will be put to good use. His father scoffed like he was offended before his expression changed to one more gentle. He stared at his son before giving a firm nod, telling him that he trusted him to take care of himself and come out of this alive. Despite their strained relation, Naruto couldn't quite help the smile from forming as he sent him a salute. He felt someone tap his shoulder and turned around to see Ajuka, who motioned for him to look towards the front. Doing what he was told, he allowed his eyes to widen if only a bit as he watched the 4 Satans stand next to each other on an elevated platform. Naruto zoned out as they began talking. Something about taking rightful place amongst them. A bit of revenge talk he was able to take in, and it was finished by showing the rest that they were the most powerful, or whatever. Honestly, Naruto cared little for anything that they said. His blood was pumping, he could feel his energy circulating in his body, ready to be let loose any moment. The urge for a good fight calling out his name. He could already see himself slaughtering all of them, one by one, be they angel or fallen. Hell, at this point he would probably even kill a devil should they get in their way. Unknowingly to him his eyes changed from blue to red as he slowly began leaking out killing intent, accompanied by a bloodthirsty smile that promised death and destruction. It started out small, but the more he let his mind wander the bigger it grew as fellow devils began feeling it and looked for the source, which was him. Flames began to flicker into existence surrounding his form. Some formed at his feet, while others around his shoulders and fingers. His friends took a step back as they could feel the sheer amount maliciousness he gave off. They weren't the only ones, as even the Satan stopped their speech in favor of watching him, with each holding smirks at seeing how ready he was. Like everyone else, they knew who he was and the potential he held in him. Deciding to not let him waiting, the barrier around them dropped, causing everyone to feel the large source of holy energy that came from hundreds of miles away. Not waiting a second longer, he jumped up high in the air before two large wings out of his own flames formed around his back. He didn't even spare them a glance as he shot forward, wanting to make first contact and spill blood. A monster? No, a demon. That's what went through everyone's mind as they witnessed the one-sided slaughter that was happening before them. How was this possible? He was just one man, for crying out loud. Yet, despite that, he was lowering their numbers, one by one. Some shuddered at the smile he wore. A smile that promised certain death that would come for them, should they attempt to oppose them or not. Even now, the man's blonde hair was painted red from the blood of their comrades. The man's eyes, which started of blue much like a cloudless sky, were nothing more than a pair of crimson orbs that looked at them like they were nothing more than mere annoyances. Preposterous. They, children of God himself, looked at as they were nothing? Scowling, dozens of magic circles formed in the air which began shooting repeated light spears at the demon in human skin. The blonde looked amused at their attempt, and allowed their attacks to get closer and closer before he, with a snap of his fingers, summoned a massive wall of destructive fire that reached high into the sky. Their light spears were reduced to nothing upon coming in contact with those mutated flames, much to their dismay, as they were the go-to attack when it came to dealing with those from the underworld. Behind the wall of flames, Naruto gave a smirk before he disappeared. Slowly but surely the flames died down. Several light spears were formed in preparation, only for them to see no one there. It was empty. The only sign he was ever there was the scorched ground before them. Grk. Gurgling sounds reached their ears, prompting them to turn around only to see their target standing there, his back facing them, unconcerned that they might strike him down. Smirking arrogantly, they got ready to attack him once more, only for their eyes to widen as one by one they fell to their knees, each of them sporting a hole where their heart used to be. Naruto clicked his tongue in annoyance as he could feel their life force fade away. One would be surprised if they were to see the look he was sporting at this exact moment. Even with himself covered in blood of those he had slain, he still was not satisfied. He had hoped that this war would provide him with opponents which he could test himself again, to finally find out what his limits are. But instead all he got were a few dozen grunts that were not even worth the effort he had put in. They were weak, detestable. Just mere annoyances who stood in the way of the true important ones that were fighting in this war. But alas. He casually shrugged his shoulders. Perhaps if he would kill more and more of them, someone more powerful would appear? With that, a pair of wings made of flames formed on his back as he kicked off, leaving behind a field littered with corpses belonging to one of heaven's many battalions that were eradicated by a single man. Mere minutes after his departure, a small group of devils arrived. Along with them was Seraphal, who had quickly tried to catch up to her friend after he had left them all behind. "Dear Lucifer, what happened here?" She heard one of the men speak as they looked around at the scattered body parts that lay around. The field was painted red with the exception of the large scorch mark that stood out in the middle. Despite them being devils, most weren't used to seeing something like this before them. It looked like a one-sided slaughter had happened against an opponent who simply outclassed them. "Naruto happened." She spoke up, getting their attention. "Naruto? You mean the son of Lord Baal?" She nodded. Damn, never would have expected that from a kid like him. He did look quite excited at the prospect of fighting, but still, to single-handedly kill of an entire force of angels. He looked around and noticed the others of their group were looking at the dozens of angels who each sported an empty hole in their chest. Not too far away, several hearts could be seen laying there on the ground, showing that they were removed with almost surgical precision. Seraphal said nothing. Her thoughts were with her friend whom she was concerned about. She was sure everyone had felt the malicious energy rolling off of him seconds before he shot off. It was pure evil. Yes, they were devils and their energy was dark, but what she had felt coming from him was on a whole different level of dark. Just being close to him made you tremble as you could feel his desire to kill, maim and destroy whoever got in his way. It was a big difference compared to he usually was, which was more carefree with a welcoming aura surrounding him, prompting others to want to speak or be around him. What she and others had felt made them want to run away and hide from him in fear of standing in his way. So potent the aura was that others had went a different location as to not get in his way. After giving Naruto's work one last look over, the group set off hoping to find him or anyone else. Meanwhile, Naruto was flying through the sky without a rush. His previous encounter with what he assumed were mere scouts had left a bad taste in his mouth, which he tried to get rid of by taking his time traveling to where he could feel a lot of energy signatures belonging to both angels and devils. Most likely a big battle was happening, and he looked forward to taking part. His speculations turned out to be true, as not long thereafter he came upon the sight of a massive battle going on. What surprised him, however, were the black, feathery wings he could see. Wings that belonged to either angel or devils but fallen. He was curious what they were doing here, as this war had nothing to do with them as far as he knew, at least. It was between heaven and hell, not to mention that their numbers were the lowest of the three factions, which made him question what Azazel was thinking. As he looked at the battlefield, he spotted the long crimson hair belonging to his friend and slowly flew towards him. As he lowered himself, he summoned a massive wall of fire stretching for what seemed to be miles, along with it being several hundred feet high, causing those that were high up in the sky to quickly move back. "Yo!" Naruto greeted his friend, who had turned around to face him the moment the flames were summoned. "Oh, Naruto. It seems you have been busy." Sirzechs greeted them as he noticed his blood-covered hair and hands. "Yeah, I ran into some scouts and quickly got rid of them. They were disappointing, really, didn't even put on a good fight." He ran his hand through his hair, unbothered by the blood in it. "You killed an entire battalion?" He shrugged. "Yeah, though they were really weak. Like, it actually upset me how pathetic they were." He chuckled. "Didn't even realize it when I removed their hearts from their chest." He clenched his bloody fist. Sirzechs chuckled nervously upon hearing that. "By the way, what is up with those fallen? Why are they here? I mean, last time I checked, this has nothing to do with them." "I'm not sure of that myself. Anyway, can you get rid of those flames of yours? It's getting quite hot in here, and I'm sure others will agree." Sirzechs gestured behind them at those who kept their distance from the heat. Rolling his eyes, he snapped his fingers, allowing the flames to die down till they were just flickering embers. "I'm gonna meet Azazel. Perhaps he can provide an actual challenge instead of the rest of the fodder." Without waiting for a reply, he jumped up, his wings once more coming into existence, as he headed towards the only 12-winged fallen alive. "Ho! So Naruto Bale himself comes to face me?" a man said as he floated in midair, suspended by his 12 pitch black wings that came out of his back. He looked to be in his early 20s with black hair which had blonde bangs and violet eyes like so many other fallen. "Yes. I hope you can prove to be an actual challenge unlike those others." Naruto spoke arrogantly, his eyes half-lidded as if the man was not even a threat. Something that wasn't true, as he could feel the power the man had, which was more than any other fallen he had encountered. Probably what made him the leader of their faction. Instead of getting annoyed by his arrogance, Azazel merely smirked at his younger opponent. He had heard all sorts of information about the young Bale heir. From his unique bloodline to his enormous magic power, which was said to have already surpassed some of the strongest beings. He, Sirzechs, and Ajuka were said to be some of the major players of the war on the devil's side. Someone who should be eliminated if the opportunity presents itself, as some had feared what would become of them when they would get older. However, where some would find themselves afraid after sensing the younger male's massive magic reserves, Azazel only found himself shaking in excitement. Apparently the boy was quite a monster when it came to fighting, a true devil who enjoys the thrill of a fight. The fact that he was already covered in blood only seemed to back up those reports. "So I guess you wish to fight, huh?" Azazel said as he released his killing intent on the younger boy, who smiled viciously in response. "Yes, let's see if you truly are worthy of your wings." He released his own aura and bloodlust that washed over the battlefield. Even Azazel was caught off guard at the potency of his aura, which surpassed his own, before he quickly collected himself and got ready. Closing his eyes, Naruto stopped releasing his killing intent before opening them, showing a deadly glint mixed with excitement of what was about to happen. As if there was some unseen signal, both men shot towards another, meeting the other in the middle, fist against fist. After staying locked like that for longer than comfortable, they disengaged before going back on the offense. Their limbs were a blur as they dealt but also took damage. Naruto felt a fist impact against his cheek and allowed momentum to turn him around before lashing out with a kick which was blocked. Despite blocking, Azazel was set several feet back as he clenched his fist from how hard he had kicked him. It was impressive for someone his age, Azazel mused. He was several millennia old, yet here was a boy barely a century old matching him blow for blow. Looking at his opponent, Azazel saw him smirk. The wounds he had dealt had already been healed, and he cursed the boy's phoenix blood. The only sign he had managed to get a hit in was the few drops of blood that ran down his chin. "You're good," Naruto yelled. "I can't remember the last time someone has made me bleed." He clenched his fist and Azazel could see crimson flames flickering in existence. "But let's take this up a notch, shall we?" He didn't wait for a reply as several dozen magic circles formed behind him, each shooting a concentrated burst of destruction towards Azazel, who quickly formed several magic circles himself, and countered by meeting his attack with light spears of his own. Naruto clicked his tongue as he saw his attack being cancelled out by Azazel's. Had it been Sirzechs that used his attack, Naruto had no doubts he would have won the struggle for power, as Sirzechs' power of destruction was more potent than his. It was something he had found out when they had sparred. Due to his unique bloodline, each time he used either pyrokinetics or destruction by itself, it wouldn't be able to match up to someone who could only use said power. But if he were to use his unique bloodline, which was a mix between the two, his attack would always come out on top. Unless, of course, the other would vastly overpower their own attack. Due to being lost in his thoughts, he missed Azazel, forming another light spear, this one much more powerful than the others he had made, and threw it towards him. His danger senses screamed at him, and in the last second he was able to defend himself as his arm shot out, and he grabbed the spear with his own hands. Ignoring the burning sensation, he spun around, spear still in his hand, before releasing it right back at the fallen, who widened his eyes at the unexpected move. Dodging, Azazel watched as his own spear flew past him and luckily didn't hit any of his own man. Looking back, he allowed a small smirk to show as he noticed Naruto's slightly trembling hand. Despite him being a phoenix with high regeneration, holy energy would still hurt them, which was one of the reasons he was so surprised by his counter. Noticing Azazel's smirk, Naruto surprised the man as he brought his other hand up and lit it aflame before severing his damaged hand. He didn't even as much as twitch as he focused his attention on Azazel's surprised expression as a new hand formed within seconds. Giving it a test, he nodded satisfied as he could feel no more holy energy inside of him. "Oh my, you sure are full of surprises, aren't you, Naruto-san? To take advantage of your advanced healing and do something no other devil would have done, of course. You think something as insignificant as that would stop me? Don't be ridiculous, I haven't even gotten serious yet." To show he was not lying, he flared his power, causing numerous heads to turn into their direction at the oppressive aura that washed over the battlefield, if only for a few seconds. "You still wish to continue?" Naruto asked the older man. Azazel nodded. Despite not showing it, he was slightly nervous. That brief flare of power was enough for him to know that when it comes down to pure reserves, Naruto's were already larger than his own. Something that was quite concerning given that he was older by several millennia. He hoped that his years of experience could make up for the gap in power. "Very well then. It seems I will have to show why despite my young age they already fear me." Naruto chuckled darkly as he stared at the broken and bleeding form of Azazel, who was laying on the ground in front of him, breathing heavily. "Satisfied?" Naruto asked mockingly as he looked at the man's violet eyes, which stared at him with poorly concealed fear. Below him, Azazel nodded weakly before coughing up more blood. Never in his life had he imagined himself being so outclassed. He was the leader of their faction, yet a boy barely in his hundreds had utterly destroyed him. How? Even with all the information he had on him. Information which he thought would have prepared him, perhaps even give him the upper hand, he still had lost the moment Naruto had gotten serious. As he stared up at what would appear to be his executioner, Azazel couldn't help but lay the blame at himself. The blame of participating in the war. "I wish I could feel a woman for one last time," were Azazel's thoughts, as he could feel the temperature around him rising. No doubt for whatever he would use to finish him with, and closed his eyes, only for nothing to happen. Slowly he opened his eyes and looked up to see Naruto's arm being stopped by none other than Sirzechs himself. While any other time he would have questioned what went through the crimson-haired man's head, he decided to keep quiet this time. "Enough, Naruto. We're being called back," Sirzechs said. Naruto glanced at his friend from the corner of his eye before smirking lightly as he lit his entire arm aflame. Sirzechs only narrowed his eyes as he coated his arm in the power of destruction and increasing the grip he had on his arm. Eventually, what for Azazel felt was an eternity, Naruto stopped and allowed Sirzechs to lower his arm. "Very well." He looked down at Azazel, his eyes flashing between blue and red before he looked away. "Till next time," he said way too cheery to the crow below before he kicked off. "Why?" Azazel asked once only Sirzechs was left. The man said nothing for a moment before reaching in his pocket and retrieving a small vial. "Here, I take it you know what these are." Azazel reached up and took the vial from his hand before bringing it to his mouth and downed it. Immediately he felt his wounds close up and was good to go, aside from the small amount of blood he lost. "It would do nobody any good if someone like you were taken out this early in the war. Don't mistake this as us being friends or anything. I only did it for Naruto." Having said his piece, wings sprouted out of Sirzechs' back before he too left. Azazel stood there for a little bit longer, all by himself, before slowly he began to chuckle. "Naruto Bale, you truly are a monster," he said to himself as his eyes were focused on a different vial he was holding. This one held a couple of droplets of blood Azazel had managed to get during their fight. He was going to use it to see what it was that made a monster such as him. There should be no way he should have been so out of his league during their fight. Him who could fight ultimate class devils with ease. Him who held 12 wings and lead an entire faction by himself. After a while he stopped laughing and spared the vial one last glance before pocketing it away safely. 6 pairs of wings came into existence as he headed towards their HQ. Arriving back at their camp, people parted as they noticed both the expression of annoyance he held along with the aura that surrounding him, which promised pain for anyone who would attempt to speak with him. Naruto scowled as he grumbled underneath his breath. This close, he was this close. He clenched his fist. Fucking Sirzechs interrupting him just as he was about to erase the crow from existence. Why did he stop him? Wasn't killing your enemy the point of war? Arg. He suddenly yelled in frustration before expelling a ring of fire from his body. He was sure people would have cheered for him had he actually finished him off. After all, Azazel is the strongest fallen angel, and removing him from the board would have been a major blow to the point that they might have even retreated or even withdrawn themselves in fear of more higher-ranked members dying. You! Where's my tent? Naruto asked, or rather demanded, as he addressed one of the more important-looking people that he could see. It's over there. The man stammered slightly as his red eyes seemed to bore into his own before pointing to a small group of tents set up together. It's the second one on the right. Naruto grumbled some sort of thanks as he moved towards his tent. Entering, he immediately walked up to the futon that was there and allowed himself to fall down, the blood on his clothes and hands having gotten rid of during his little fight with Azazel. His clothes were still dirty, however, something he didn't care about as he relaxed on the soft futon. Not long after he had laid down, the sound of footsteps alerted him of someone entering his tent. Opening a single eye, his annoyance returned full force as he saw it was Sirzechs that had entered. Catching him off guard, Naruto shot up from the futon before landing a haymaker right on Sirzechs' right cheek, sending the crimson-haired man flying out of his tent and coming to a stop several dozen feet away. Naruto, Sirzechs greeted as blood leaked down the side of his mouth before he slowly got up, wincing at the throbbing pain he felt from the hit. Seeing Sirzechs flying out of the tent gained the attention of several devils that were there, including Ajuka and Serafal, who came to see what it was about but didn't interfere. Tell me, why did you stop me from finishing him off? I already too. Stop lying to me. He interrupted him as the temperature in the area seemed to rise in response to his outburst. I was this close. He held his index and thumb a centimeter away from touching. Just one more attack and he would have been done, and we would have gotten rid of one of the bigger threats in this war. He leveled him a glare. So tell me, why did you stop me from killing Azazel? At the mention of the Azazel's name, several devils muttered amongst themselves, especially at the fact that Naruto was implying he could have killed the man if Sirzechs hadn't stopped him. Some looked at him with respect, as Azazel was definitely not a pushover. The man had several millennia of experience and 12 wings, indicating that he was ultimate class if using devil ranks. Aside from that, they all knew that Azazel was capable of fighting ultimate class devils with ease, using holy energy every fallen and angel had, which was a massive weakness to any devil regardless of their strength, something Naruto had first-hand experience with. Not going to answer? Naruto asked him before nodding to himself. I see, I'm heading back to my tent. Don't bother me or else. He leveled everyone present with a glare which promised pain before he swiftly turned around and walked back to his tent, not sparing anyone a second glance. The rest of his day went by without any interruptions. Nobody came by, not even his own family. Not that he minded that though, as it was quite nice to just relax and not worry about anything. Days went by as the three biblical factions continued to wage war against another. Unfortunately for Naruto, he wasn't able to fight against Azazel again, as the man would be present in a different area each time he headed out. Each faction suffered large losses, something that showed as more and more tents stayed empty each time they would return. It was getting kind of repetitive for Naruto, as each day he would get up, head out and kill off either fallen or angels depending on who he would run into, and made quick work of them before heading back. It was honestly boring him how easily he could kill. He also noticed his friends were concerned about him ever since his little clash with Sirzechs. They were getting quite unnerved at how casually he could kill and keep on going like nothing had happened. He shrugged off their concerns, however, as he had no interest in any of that. A heavy blow was dealt to them, the devils, as news reached them that 2 of the Satans had been killed in battle. Rumors said that Michael, heaven's strongest after God himself, did it, but nothing was confirmed. Currently Naruto could be seen floating in the sky, casually incinerating a couple of 2-winged angels who were stupid enough to think they stood a chance against him. He, however, wasn't even paying any attention. For the past few days he was able to sense 2 enormous energy signatures, easily surpassing anything he had sensed in his life. What got his attention though was that they were getting closer and closer each day, to the point that weaker beings were already being affected by the power these 2 excluded. Now though, he felt it even stronger and couldn't help but feel his blood pumping through his veins. Whomever this was would be a true challenge for him. Not like that annoying crow Azazel who decided to stay away from him. No, someone with this amount of power was worthy of seeing him go all out. He only hoped they would get here fast, as he wasn't sure if he could wait or seek out this power himself. Reawarg. The fighting stopped temporarily as a loud roar gained everybody's attention. 2 dragons, each several dozen feet high, crashed into the battlefield. Each were several dozen feet in height and uncaring of those their massive bodies crushed as they fought against another. They didn't pay any attention to anyone aside from the other dragon, as they radiated a massive amount of power. Slowly a large grin crept upon Naruto's lips as he easily recognized the 2. Drake and Albion, the 2 heavenly dragons capable of gods and satans if they wished. Naruto kept on watching as the 2 dragons lay waste to their surrounding and chuckled at the weak attempts of both angels and fallen as they sent lightning spears at the pair, which harmlessly bounced off of their scaled. Naruto! The sound of Sirzechs calling for him caused him to look away from the 2 beasts and gazed upon the man who, like him, looked unharmed. Amazing, huh? This is what I've been waiting for. This is the ultimate test. I doubt I will get another chance in my life to fight against either of those. He spoke with excitement dripping into his voice before looking at him. You're going to join in? Sirzechs looked at him before glancing at the 2 fighting dragons that continued to devastate the surroundings and nodding. Yes, I will, in order to make sure none of our men will be killed. If Naruto could smile any wider he would have as he heard that. Very well, I look forward to seeing you fully release your power. He held his fist out towards him. Sirzechs looked at the outstretched appendage before smiling and bumped against it with his own. Same here, my friend, same here. With that said, he watched as Naruto flew up high into the sky while he stayed on the ground. Both Sirzechs and Naruto closed their eyes and concentrated on their demonic energy. Then, without a warning, both their power exploded out of their body. The earth shook for miles and the fighting stopped as for the first time since the war both devils let loose their full power. Temperature rose to almost unbearable heights and slowly more and more members of each faction fell to their knees as a massive weight was suddenly dropped on their shoulders, accompanied by a tremendous amount of killer intent which could be felt for miles. Even the two heavenly dragons had stopped their fight as they were affected by their auras. The temperature continued to rise as up in the sky Naruto released more and more crimson flames out of his body, which went on for hundreds of feet in several directions to the point that it looked and felt like they were all in the presence of the sun itself. Suddenly the flames stopped expanding and instead withdrew themselves towards the owner Naruto, who by now could no longer be seen, as in his place was a ball of fire several dozen feet wide in diameter. Bale's famed power of destruction arched around it, and despite being high up in the air, the grass on the ground around him began to burn and the ground turned into lava. Down below on the ground Sirzechs could no longer be seen either, as the power he released completely covered his form, and in his place was a beam of red energy that reached up high in the sky. A beacon much like Naruto, as the ground around him had cratered in several feet due to the immense pressure it was enduring. Slowly, just like Naruto, he called his power back to him but didn't weaken in the slightest. The beam got smaller and smaller to the point that it had fully receded into his own body. At that exact moment the miniature sun above them exploded as both Naruto and Sirzechs showed everyone their transformed form. Human-shaped aura of destruction / secret art, complete transformation. Phoenix, both exclaimed at the same time as their transformation was complete. High in the sky where Naruto used to be was now a being spoken of only in myths and legends themselves. Devils, angels, fallen, and even the two dragons looked at it in awe as they could feel the energy it was radiating surpassed any devil they had met before. It was a being made entirely out of crimson flames that flickered wildly yet controlled. Its majestic wings from left to right span over 100 feet in diameter and sparked with red lightning. The bird threw its head back before letting loose a loud shriek which could be heard for miles. Away from him his father, Zekrom Bale, watched his son with pride visible in his eyes. Never in his wildest imagination he had thought his son would have been capable of doing something like this. Yes, he knew his son had a massive amount of energy which easily surpassed his own, but even he was shocked at just how much it exactly was. He had felt it when he and Sirzechs went all out, and could easily tell it was several times higher than the current Lucifer, much to his and everyone's shock. He decided then and there that once the war is over he would let his son take over the clan from him. A safe distance away Azazel too watched the transformation he had undergone, and was a mix between fear and awe. Even when he had clashed with the younger man he had not shown this kind of power. Something he was quite glad for, as he knew he would not stand a chance, as even now the power he sensed was suffocating. Similar thoughts went through their minds as they averted their attention to Sirzechs, who by now could no longer be made out as a human, or rather a devil, as in his place was what appeared to be a being made completely out of destruction and floated a few inches above the ground. It made for a fearsome sight, as it looked like just floating energy which spread in all sorts of directions. On an unseen signal Naruto flapped his wings before shooting towards both dragons, who were caught off guard by the speed he possessed and could do nothing but brace themselves as Naruto crashed into them, his unique bloodline managing to harm them as it destroyed their scales. Sirzechs watched as Naruto tackled the white dragon Albion into the ground, leaving Drake standing. Wasting no time he moved. For everyone bar a few he seemingly disappeared. The only sign he moved was the destroyed ground he stood on as he appeared a few feet away from the red dragon before unleashing a thick beam of destruction which flew towards Drake, who brought one of his wings in front of him to tank the blow. RGH. Drake grunted as, much like his rival, the attack managed to destroy his scales and harm him directly, much to his shock, as none other than Albion had managed to harm him. The surrounding supernatural beings quickly retreated to safety as the heavy weight that previously pressed them down had disappeared and allowed them to move. Both for not wanting to get flattened by either dragon, and because they all knew that they stood no chance against either of the current fighters. Not to mention that they had noticed that Sirzechs' current form was lashing out wildly, showing that he wasn't completely in control of it. As the attack died down, Drake removed his wing before lashing out with his tail. Sirzechs quickly moved out of the way as the tail met the ground and subsequently shook the earth. Without any commands, several magic circles formed above the Crimson Dragon, each shooting down a concentrated beam of energy directly onto the dragon's back. Just as Drake was about to strike, he lost footing as the ground shook once more. Both glanced to the side where they could see Albion wrestling with the still transformed Naruto. Disengaging from his opponent, Naruto was about to fly up, only for Albion to lash out with his maw in an attempt to bite him. He was shocked, however, as instead of biting into something solid, his teeth went through his form, allowing Naruto to fly up. Shooting up in the sky, Naruto came to a stop as he could no longer see his opponent, but still sense him. Circling a couple times, he released another loud shriek. Down below, both dragons and Sirzechs waited as they heard the shriek. Their attention was focused upwards towards the clouds, which began to glow, much to their confusion. Then, without any further warnings, the clouds parted and they could see several balls of fire raining down towards them, each of them as big as Naruto's transformed state. Both dragons brought their wings up for cover, whereas Sirzechs concentrated and a shield formed made purely out of destruction. Boom, boom, boom. The earth shook continuously for the next minute as the trio were bombarded as Naruto continued his assault. Eventually it stopped and an enormous dust cloud covered them. Those who had retreated could only watch on in awe at the battle currently taking place. Monster. That's what Sirzechs and Naruto were as they looked at the two devils fighting against two beings that could lay waste to gods. Then again, after their show of power, some thought that if they wanted to, both Sirzechs and Naruto were more than a match against several gods. Coming down, Naruto watched as his attack had left several deep craters in the surrounding area. He noticed Sirzechs was alright, while both dragons sported several scorch marks. Strong. The voice of Drake boomed through the battlefield. You two are by far the strongest devils alive. I can't remember the last time someone other than Albion has been able to hurt me. Indeed, but I can tell you aren't used to that form, are you? Albion spoke to Naruto. Most likely due to this being your first time transforming in battle. Naruto casually flapped his wings before he replied. You are indeed correct. I just wanted to see what my limits are, as I have no interest in those fodder. He referred to the angels and fallen he had been fighting. I haven't felt so alive in a long time. The thrill of knowing that I could potentially die. He flared his power. I missed it. He began releasing more and more power as flames rose above him and focused on a concentrated point before it began to form a small ball which grew at an extremely fast rate. This will be it. My last attack before my transformation will die down. The miniature sun above him grew bigger and bigger as he pumped more power into it to the point that it was already several times larger than he himself was. Sirzechs, upon noticing Naruto's attack, wisely retreated as he too felt like he was about to lose his current transformation and quickly blitzed to safety several miles away before slowly returning to his normal state and fell to his knees, panting hard. While he regained his breath, he kept his eyes on the still expanding sun and could feel the increase in temperature even at the distance he was now, and quickly put up a barrier in front of him. Finally, Naruto stopped feeding more energy to his attack, which by now was a couple dozen times larger than himself, and looked down at both dragons. This is the end, he yelled out before flying away from underneath the small sun he created. Supernova. As his attack descended, Naruto flapped his wings as he quickly got as far away as he could. Halfway during his flight, the flames dissipated and showed a battered Naruto who was unconscious and only clad in pants, his transformation having burned away any other article of clothing he wore. As he crashed into the ground miles away, he was unable to see what happened next as hundreds of barriers popped up in existence. Behind them, they all watched the enormous ball of fire go lower and lower until eventually it made contact with both dragons, and the world was bathed in light. So soft, Naruto thought as he found himself waking up. His eyes were kept closed as he shuffled around, only to bite his tongue as he could feel every muscle in his body screaming in pain. Taking a deep breath, he opened his eyes only to immediately close them as he stared straight into light that was too bright for his eyes. HNNG, he couldn't help but let out a soft groan as he moved around so he was a bit more comfortable. You're awake! A feminine voice suddenly spoke up. Not having expected somebody else was here with him, his body jolted only for him to suck in a deep breath at the sudden movement. Ah! Please don't move. The same voice spoke. It was much softer this time. He felt two soft hands touch his chest before slowly the pain disappeared. Much to his surprise. Thank you, he said softly as he slowly turned his head and opened his eyes. Beautiful was the first thing he said before quickly closing his mouth as she blushed, making her appear even cuter. The person helping him had long pink hair tied up in twin tails that reached to the middle of her back, pale skin and two large golden eyes which stared right back at him with an emotion he hadn't seen in a long time. Yukai? Naruto asked himself as he noticed she had two orange fox ears on the top of her head along with a single thick, orange bushy tail behind her. She wore an interesting-looking outfit, one he had never seen before but found that it really looked good on her. It was a blue miniskirt type of clothing along with what appeared to be blue thigh-length stockings and arm guards or something like it. Where am I and who are you, if you don't mind me asking? He asked her politely after he finished looking her over. You are currently in Takamagahara. She watched his eyes widen after a moment, no doubt realizing where he exactly was. And my name is Tamamo. Tamamo no Mei, Gashijin-sama. She spoke cheerfully, which was accompanied by a beautiful smile, and he couldn't help but blush slightly, much to his shock, before raising an eyebrow at how she addressed him. Eh? Naruto replied as he received his answer. Gashijin-sama? He knew exactly what it meant but not why she was calling him that. As far as he's aware, this is the first time meeting someone like her. After all, he was sure he would remember someone as pretty as her. Suddenly Tamamo stood up, giving him a better view of her outfit, and noticed that she didn't mind how he was looking at her. In fact, she seemed quite happy. Please stay here, Gashijin-sama, while I will tell the person who brought you here you awake. She spoke sweetly, yet there was this underlying tone to it which caused him to nod. Great! She chirped as she clapped her hands together before she twirled around and walked towards the door. his eyes unconsciously lingering on her behind, though he did take notice that she was walking on black okobo, which could still be heard even as she had left the room. "So you're the person little Tamamo-chan is all smitten with?" A soft, feminine voice spoke up, causing his head snap to the right in the direction the voice came from. His eyes widened slightly as he looked at the woman who stood in the doorway, staring right back at him. The first thing he took notice of were the woman's eyes. They were bright yellow golden, even like he was looking at the sun, and filled with warmth directed towards him. Long raven-colored hair held up in a bun with a couple strands running down the side of her face. She wore an expensive and beautiful black kimono which hugged her body and emphasized her pale skin, which held an otherworldly shine to it. Naruto wasn't sure of who she was, but she held an aura around her that told him she was quite important. He spotted Tamamo standing a couple steps behind her, her head bowed down slightly. Actually, scratched that he had somewhat of an idea who the woman standing there was due to Tamamo informing him he was currently in Takamagahara, but that made him wonder why. Why was he here? Or rather, why did she bring him here? And how long has he been here for? Calm yourself. The woman spoke up once more, and he did what she told him. Closing his eyes, he took a few deep yet calming breaths before opening them. "Good, I welcome you, Naruto Bale. I'm sure you know who I am, but I will introduce myself nonetheless," the woman said as she straightened herself a little. "I am Amaterasu Amakami, Shinto goddess of the sun. Behind me is my personal handmaiden Tamamo no Mae," but she already introduced herself. "Ah, nice you meet you, Amaterasu-sama?" He added the suffix after thinking about it while not showing any shock for being in the presence of a goddess. Much to his surprise, the sun goddess merely waved her hand. "Please, there's no need for that, Amaterasu is just fine." She smiled at him, which he returned. "All right then, Amaterasu. Can you tell me why I am here? Not that I don't like it, but last thing I remember was having one hell of a time with those two lizards, and now I'm well here." Both Amaterasu and Tamamo had a drop of sweat going down the back of their head as they listened how casually he spoke about both heavenly dragons, beings that were stronger than she herself was. "Of course. I brought you here upon Tamamo-chan's request." Seeing the questioning look sent her way, she continued. "You didn't think the enormous amount of power that was released by both yourself and Sirzechs went unnoticed, did you? I'm sure every pantheon, from Norse to Egyptian, had felt your power." Tamamo certainly did, and she almost begged to watch what was happening once she sensed your power. "Imagine both our surprise when we watched two transformed devils fighting against the heavenly dragons which are capable of burning pantheons to ashes." "I see, but how did you watch?" "I'm sure I would have sensed your presence." "Oh, we watched from afar. Here, in this temple to be exact. Us Shinto gods want a part in your three-way war, and so does any other." "I understand," Naruto said as she finished speaking. How couldn't he? The war had nothing to do with them, as it was something between Lucifer and God himself as far as he understood. It would only bring the wrath of other factions if they were to partake, or even worse, support a side. "But what about Tamamo? The way she addresses me speaks of familiarity, but as much as I try I can't for the life of me remember her." He sent an apologetic look to the pink-haired fox girl, who frowned for a second before it was gone. Tamamo and Amaterasu exchanged glances before the latter nodded her head and stepped aside, allowing the former to walk up to him. "Do you not remember me, Goshijin-sama?" Tamamo tilted her head as her fox ears twitched in response. Naruto had to fight the urge to call her out on her cuteness as to not ruin his imagine. Mouse, she brought one of her hands up and scratched her cheek. "Do you not remember saving me several decades ago?" Naruto furrowed his eyebrows and thought. He did recall saving a young girl several years ago, back when he was on one of his casual trips to the human world shortly after his mother had died. It was a young girl who was hunted, or at least it appeared to be as such, as he could remember seeing tears running down her cheeks and the fear in her eyes. She was chased by what seemed like thousands of soldiers. His eyes darkened a little, which didn't went unnoticed by the others in the room. It was the start of his descent into darkness. The death of his mother had dealt a massive blow to himself as a person, and seeing those thousands of soldiers attempting to kill a single girl was enough of a reason to vent his anger. It was known as a massacre throughout feudal Japan, as that night over 5,000 soldiers along with several miles of land had been wiped out from existence. "You do remember?" Tamamo's soft voice brought him out of his memories that belonged to a darker time. "Yes, I do. It's just that back then the girl I saved didn't have a tail nor fox ears, or at least I didn't notice," he said as he chuckled lightly. "So that's why you're so affectionate? Because I saved your life?" His answer was a nod from the fox girl, who had moved closer as she sat down near the foot of the bed. "But how did you end up here?" He looked at Amaterasu, who smiled softly at him. Thankful that he had saved her, for she was too late. "She ended up here because she called out to me. That night, when she was hunted, she prayed for someone to come and save her. It was impressive for me to hear a plea from a yukai, as usually it's Inari who handles them. Unfortunately, I received her plea too late, as when I arrived it was already over and I found Tamamo sitting in a field by herself, crying. Despite that, I introduced myself to her and asked if she wished to go with me. An offer which she graciously accepted, despite the tears that were staining her cheeks." Amaterasu couldn't help but say. Naruto turned to Tamamo to ask if what she said was true, but was caught off guard as he noticed her staring at him and the intense emotions he could spot in her big, amber-colored eyes. He found himself naked underneath her gaze and quickly looked away, making her frown as she wondered if she did something wrong. What is happening to me? Naruto questioned himself. I never felt like this before. It usually was him that made woman felt so self-aware, and it was a new experience for him. Remembering something important, he snapped out of those thoughts and turned to Amaterasu, who looked amused at their little interaction if her smirk was anything to go by. Say, Amaterasu, is the war still going on? If so, I need to return and help. I mean, I'm quite imp. Please calm down, Naruto-kun, she said as she noticed the frown Tamamo held upon him, mentioning leaving them, or more importantly her. The war ended shortly after I brought you here after God died. Silence reigned the room as she watched his expression shift into one of disbelief. What? Did you just say that God is dead? He ignored the wince upon the mention of the biblical God. But how? I mean, I'm not sure myself. From what I managed to understand, however, is that he had participated in the war, tired from sealing away Trihexa. It took out a lot of him, and so he fought in a weakened state. I see. Who killed him? He asked her after a moment of silence. I don't know. Rumors are that Lucifer struck him down while receiving fatal wounds as well. Naruto closed his eyes. That was big news, as with the death of God, angels no longer were the strongest amongst the biblical three, especially since from participating himself he had seen several angels fall. A part of him felt sad though, as now he would never have an opportunity to fight against the man himself. While he knew that God at his best outclassed him several times, it would probably be an interesting fight, especially after the fun he had with the two dragons. Speaking of which, what happened to the heavenly dragons? I mean, I passed out, and I doubt I did any lasting damage. Here Amaterasu smiled. Well, after you passed out and were brought here, God appeared on the battlefield and sealed both of them in sacred gears despite his exhausted state, and are now waiting till they appear inside a human. I should warn you though, Naruto-kun, that it was because of you God managed to seal them away without any issues, as they were caught off guard. So you should keep an eye out for when either Drake or Albion are reborn, as I doubt they are happy they are now sealed away. I understand. I doubt, however, any human would be a problem for me. Don't be arrogant, she chided. Each Longinus, if mastered to such a degree, is capable of killing gods. It's safe to say both Drake and Albion, with how strong they are both classified as Longinus. Amaterasu released a soft sigh before she smiled as she saw him taking her words serious. Now that we're done with that, what do you want to do now? Do you want to leave or stay here? You are free to stay here for as long as you want, Naruto hummed as he thought it over. Honestly, he liked it here. Despite being unconscious for who knows how long, it's the first time he had no nightmares when asleep, something he wrote off as being due to the calming aura he could feel from both Amaterasu and Tamamo. It truly made a difference, as unknown to anyone but himself. One of the reasons he was looking for strong opponents was so that there was a chance that he could meet his end, a chance for him to be reunited with his mother, the person he loved the most, and whose death kickstarted a dark era in his life. He doubted even Sirzechs would be capable of killing him, especially with his ridiculously high regeneration even compared to other members of the Phoenix family. Those dragons, Drake and Albion, if Sirius would have been able to kill him if they would have fought him Sirius. It was an opportunity he couldn't let pass, as it would simultaneously sate his lust for battle. But now, when in company of Tamamo, he felt himself at ease. There was no longer a voice whispering in his head, telling him to kill or destroy any that stood in his way. She had an aura that reminded him of his mother, the one person who could get him to drop his guard. In the beginning, a part of him was afraid though. Afraid of what she would do to him, but a look into those eyes of her eased his fears, as there was no doubt she would never try anything. Not with the amount of adoration present in her amber orbs for him, and only him. Tamamo looked at him with hope-filled eyes, which he tried his hardest to ignore as he instead locked eyes with the goddess. I would like to stay here for a while if possible. Both to heal myself back to perfect, and to spend some time with Tamamo. He mumbled the last part to himself, but it was still heard by both women. Yes, Tamamo chirped. Thank you, Goshijin-sama. Quicker than he expected, Tamamo had moved closer to him, and he felt her arms wrap around him in a warm embrace. Naruto closed his eyes, basking in the warmth her body gave off. A small smile unseen to anyone but Amaterasu formed as he enjoyed the embrace he was receiving. The first one in several decades. From her position, Amaterasu watched the two with a smile. She felt happy for Tamamo, who she had come to see as her own daughter, so joyful with the person she had fallen for those years ago. A person who even she wasn't aware of. Tamamo had her fair share of suitors, each of whom were interested in her beauty and wished for her hand in marriage from different pantheons. Each of which she had kindly rejected, for she had her heart set on someone else. Despite some being more persistent than others. Luckily for her, she was under Amaterasu's protection, who as one of the strongest gods made sure they wouldn't attempt anything to her lest they wish her wrath upon them. After all, her domain over the sun surpassed that of Apollo, the Greek god, who too held a portion of control over the celestial body, by a very large margin. Looking at Naruto, she saw that he still held his small smile, and his eyes still closed. He did have a single arm wrapped around her in return, and while she wasn't an empath, she could practically feel the happiness radiating from Tamamo, who seemed to be trying to meld their bodies together. not wanting to let him go. Well, I'm taking my leave while informing your father that you are in good hands. Tamamo will keep you company. I doubt she minds that one bit. Receiving no reply, she silently left the room, leaving the two by themselves as she went and prepared a message for Lord Bale and tell him his son is alive and well. It wouldn't spell anything good for them if they would keep him away. Once Amaterasu left the room, Naruto opened his eyes and glanced downwards, looking at the top of her head where her orange fox ears rested. Tamamo? He called out her name softly, only to not receive any reply. Focusing on her, he noticed her breathing had slowed down as her face was resting against his chest. Surprisingly, she still had her arms locked behind his back as he realized she had fallen asleep. Most likely due to all that had happened and the overload of emotions that happened in such a short time. Carefully and with a smile, he leaned back until he was laying in bed with her asleep on his chest. Her single thick, bushy tail had stopped swaying in happiness and was resting to the side of them. Giving one last look at the peaceful and happy smile she wore, he slowly closed his eyes as he too drifted off to sleep. He wondered if this was going to be a new chapter in his life, one he won't have to go through by himself. Bleary, amber eyes slowly fluttered open as Tamamo woke up, feeling more refreshed than she had in a while. Sitting up, Tamamo yawned as she stretched out her arms above her head. While she lowered her hands and rubbed her still drowsy eyes. HNNG, the sound of a male groaning got her attention as she immediately lost any traces of sleep she previously held before she shuffled back and gazed downwards, and her expression quickly changing. She still held her shock, but it was mixed with a high amount of adoration as she stared at the sleeping form of Naruto. Her cheeks flushed the longer she stared before realizing what was going on, and her flush increased in intensity. She had fallen asleep on top of Naruto, her Gashijin-sama. Tamamo clasped her hands together and held them in front of her chest in an attempt to calm her rapidly beating heart. However, instead of calming her heartbeat, it only increased as slowly he opened his eyes and his cerulean blue staring into her amber. Tamamo felt her heart was about to burst as he sent her a small smile. "Morning, Tamamo." He greeted the fox girl, who by now was hugging her bushy-looking tail. "And morning, Gashijin-sama." She responded to his greeting with a slight stammer. "Hope you had a good night's sleep." Soft chuckle escaped his throat as he saw her cheeks flush, no doubt due to her having fallen asleep on top of him. Not that he minded, however. I did. It was the best night's sleep I had in a long time, all because of you." He flashed her another smile. "Thank you." No problem, Gashijin-sama. I enjoyed it as well," she said softly before looking away while increasing her grip on her own tail. She didn't seem bothered by it though, so he didn't comment on it. However, "Tamamo?" The girl looked back in direction upon hearing him call her name. "Please stop with the Gashijin-sama crap. Call me by my name if you will." "I would like that." "Okay, Gasho, I mean Naruto-sama." A radiant smile formed on Tamamo's face upon speaking his name. Despite his attempt, Naruto couldn't help but return her smile as he watched the cheerful fox girl who was utterly infatuated with him, and while only having spoken a few words with her, she already held a large place in his heart. For she was so bright and happy, it reminded him how he used to be before the death of his mother, and a part of him wanted to see more of her like this. Neither knew what caused it or how it happened, as one moment they were smiling at another, and next thing they knew was that Naruto had pulled her in a sudden embrace. Tamamo felt her cheeks heat up as she returned the embrace with all her body, her eyes closing as she breathed in his scent. Her tail came up from behind her before it moved towards him and coiled around both of them, pressing them further against each other. Feeling Tamamo shuffle in his grasp, he spoke up with a voice heavily laced with emotion which caught her off guard. "See, can we stay like this for a while? This feels really nice," and he stopped speaking as he felt Tamamo's arms wrap around his back once more, this time with more pressure that did nothing but calm his mind. "It's okay, Naruto-sama. I know you had a hard time, but I am here to help you." Eventually, due to the arrival of Amaterasu, the two disengaged from their embrace, though they kept their close proximity, much to Tamamo's happiness, as she was going to do her best to help him. Especially now that she found out that he's much more troubled than she thought. Though it was also nice for him to allow her to see this side of him. A side where he is much more vulnerable, and she understood that he already trusted her enough to pause his usual behavior of acting like nothing could bother him. "Say, is there anything for me to wear?" he asked Tamamo, who turned to him and looked to see he was only wearing a plain short-sleeved shirt and underwear. Blushing, Tamamo ran out the room before returning not even a minute later, this time with a beautiful and expensive-looking kimono which she handed over. "There you go, Naruto-sama. It looks very good on you." He heard her compliment him as she looked him over. "Thank you, Tamamo. Let's head out, any? Don't want to keep Amaterasu waiting." He gestured for her to take the lead as he had no idea which direction they were supposed to be heading. Amaterasu watched, a pleased smile on her face as Naruto was opening up more to Tamamo, who sat as close as she could next to him. Hi, you are quite funny, Naruto-sama." Tamamo giggled. That was something she had noticed as well. Instead of Gashijin-sama, Tamamo was now calling him by his name. Something he was pleased with, she could tell, as no doubt being addressed as Gashijin-sama was not up to his liking. She herself could see where he was coming from. After all, she had told him to drop the sama suffix after her name the moment he used it. Millennia of being addressed so respectful got annoying quite fast. The only ones required to address her in a respectful manner were the gods from other pantheons, as she would not take any disrespect from them. She had to stand her ground, or else the other gods would never take her or her threats seriously. Naruto-kun, Amaterasu called as he turned his attention from Tamamo to her. Upon noticing he was looking at her, she continued, "I've sent a message to your father, Zekrom Bale, in which I stated that you are in good hands and will be staying here for an undisclosed amount of time." "Thank you." He gave a slight bow towards her before he was nudged from his side. "Yes, Tamamo?" He asked, only to come face to face with a small piece of fish held together by a pair of chopsticks mere centimeters from his face. Raising an eyebrow, he glanced at Tamamo, who nodded with a smile as she nudged them closer to his mouth. Rolling his eyes, he nonetheless parted his lips, allowing her to feed him, which she immediately did. She looked at him expectantly as she watched him chew his food. He swallowed before opening his mouth, and Tamamo took it as a sign to continue feeding him, which she did with great delight. Off to the side, Amaterasu shook her head as she watched their interaction, amused at how quickly Tamamo was pleased when it came to Naruto. But she wouldn't interrupt or stop either of them. It was obvious to her Tamamo did this on her own accord. If he had forced her or anything of such nature, it would be different, but she could see with her own eyes that they were good for another. Tamamo, who seemed to do anything to make him happy, and Naruto, who could use somebody like her in his life, even if only to keep him from succumbing to darkness, which would spell nothing good for anyone, be they devil or angel. The sound of a chair being moved got both their attention as they turned to Amaterasu, who merely waved at them. "Don't bother me, I have to attend my duty that comes with being Amakami of Japan. Once you two are done, ask Tamamo to give you a tour of the place. I'm sure she'd love to." She sent the fox girl a wink. "If you need anything, I will be located in my office. Once more ask Tamamo for that." With that, the supreme goddess left the room, and Tamamo quickly went back to feeding her self-appointed master. Days flew by as for Naruto, as he slowly but surely regained his lost power. It was quite interesting, really, how supernatural bodies worked. One could literally fight for hours, some even for days, and with a little rest they would be back to normal. But if one would use up all their energy, be it demonic or holy, it would replenish slowly. Very slowly, which Naruto found out as never before had he used up all of his demonic energy, especially since he didn't exactly know how much he had. So even now, after several days if not weeks, he could feel his energy slowly returning. Though Tamamo tried to help by channeling small amounts chakra into his body, and much to the surprise of everyone, even Amaterasu, it worked as slowly his body began accepting the different energy. It helped that it made both even closer than before, to the point that the only time she wasn't nearby was when he went to sleep. Even that had changed as he had caught her sneaking in his bed at night. He didn't mind it though, as it was nice to wake up next to somebody, not to mention that her body was quite warm as she would snuggle into him. So all in all, he had gotten more familiar with the fox girl who was in love with him. He didn't do anything else though, as despite all of that they still had known each other less than a month, regardless of whether that single month had been the best one in decades. He had told Amaterasu that, as well as he knew she was trying to get them together, something what would probably happen regardless of her interference, as she was everything he looked for in a woman that he could love. The only thing that would be a problem would be his father, the elders, and his status as heir to the Bale clan. He cared little what they would think. They had neither the power nor the audacity to attempt anything. Last time they tried to set him up with some devil woman he never heard of. Unknown to Naruto, however, was that while he was relaxing, his body and mind calming while being attended by a cute and beautiful young fox girl who seemed to be close to worshipping him, the underworld was the complete opposite. But he didn't and wouldn't know about that for a while. "Ugh, that feels really good." Naruto let out a loud groan. He was currently laying in the bed that belonged to the room he was assigned. Sitting on top of him, straddling his thighs, was Tamamo, who had offered him a massage after noticing how tense his muscles were. He had declined at first, but after a certain exercise during his late-night training, he could practically feel his muscles lock up to the point he could barely move anything from his waist up. She had helped him make their way to his room before helping him discard of his shirt and slowly, very slowly lowered him onto the bed. After releasing another hiss from the feeling of her soft hands running over his muscled back, Naruto wondered why he had declined in the first place, as he hadn't felt this relaxed in a long time. "You're really good at this." His words came out as a hiss as she loosened up a certain knot around his left shoulder blade. Tamamo basked in the praise as she continued her actions. Using a small amount of magic on her fingertips, she simultaneously worked both his muscles and the spots she couldn't reach with her hands. She quite enjoyed doing this. The feel of his muscled back underneath her nimble fingers was something she took great delight in. The sound of his groans of relief each time she would hit certain spots, along with the compliments that came with it. After a while, and once she was sure she had gotten rid of all of the knots and tension in his back, she noticed his breathing had slowed down. Carefully she moved so she was no longer straddling him before laying down next to him, before staring intently at her master's face, who wore an expression of serenity. Feeling a sudden weight next to him, Naruto turned his face sideways before slowly opening his eyes. Blue eyes met Amber as she watched him with a gaze filled with admiration. Slowly a smile crept onto his face as he moved his face closer to hers. He could see her cheeks flush, no doubt from the close proximity their faces were. Naruto lost his breath as he stared at her face, which was one of perfection. Behind her, rays of light belonging to the moon that managed to shine down upon her from the window did nothing but amplify her already immense beauty. The longer he stared at her, the more lost he got, as those warm ember orbs seemed to smother him. Moving his face closer, her cheeks got gradually more flushed before he surprised her by pecking her on her lips. Lips which he noted were very soft. Tamamo's eyes widened in shock as she stared at his now retreating face. It was quick, very quick, but she could still feel the lingering touch of his lips making contact with her own. Her tongue came out before she licked her own lips as slowly a beautiful smile formed. Did this mean he accepted her? That he liked her like she did to him? Naruto watched her smile. One so radiant and pure, he was sure it could light up even the darkest places and cleanse even the most evil souls out there. Shifting his body slightly so he was lying on his side, he placed his arms around her before gently pulling her closer till her body rested against his. You know, he started. His voice was slightly husky, making her tilt her head so she could look at him. Despite knowing you for such a short time, I've come to really like you. I'm not sure what it is, but there's just something about you that makes me feel at ease. One of his hands moved away from her waist and instead began to slowly pet her fluffy tail. Once I'm done here and with Amaterasu's approval, do you wish to travel with me? I really like you and would like to explore our relationship a bit more. As he finished speaking those words, he felt Tamamo bury her head into his chest and wrap her arms around him. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. She cheered, and Naruto couldn't help but return her embrace along with the joy she was radiating, which was very infectious. Calm down, Tamamo, everything's okay. He rubbed her back with one of his hands before shifting once more, this time so he was lying on his back with Tamamo on top of him. He could see her tail swishing wildly in excitement behind her before it stopped, and instead moved to the side and skillfully managed to pull the sheets over both of them. Sleepy? He asked, but could feel himself slowly drifting off to sleep as well. That massage she gave him was just so calming that he wished nothing more than a good night's rest. She gave a cute yawn before making herself comfortable on his chest. Good night, Naruto-sama. Tamamo murmured before she fell asleep in his welcoming embrace. Good night to you as well, Tamamo-chan. He returned while adding an affectionate suffix to her name. While he wasn't sure if she heard him, he'd like to think she did if the small squeeze she gave him was an indication. So this is the famed Naruto Bale, huh? A feminine voice spoke to her companion to the side as they stood in the doorway, watching the two sleep. Correct, Inari-chan. The other person said as she too watched them sleep. Tamamo, who was asleep on his chest, slowly rose and descending with each breath he took. He's quite handsome up close, though it seems like Tamamo-chan already has gotten her claws in him. Yep, and it seems he's reciprocating her feelings. The two of them have been spending every day since he woke up together. She even begged me to let her take care of him when I first brought him here. Young love still, to think the person who saved little Tamamo all those years ago was a devil of all things. I was surprised as well when she recognized him before begging me to save him after watching the show he had put on. By the way, have you heard anything from the underworld, Inari-chan? Inari shook her head. No, I haven't, Amaterasu-chan. The underworld has been on lockdown since the end of the war. Even I can't enter without using force, but that's not an option. Amaterasu frowned before changing the topic. So, do you want to stay here and keep watching them, or is there a reason why you're here? Well, I wouldn't mind keep watching him, as he's the reason I came here. I wanted to see who captured Tamamo's heart after all the rejections you sent out to other pantheons who were interested in her. Speaking of which, are those Greeks still upset about that? Inari asked, recalling their interest in Tamamo to the point that they made it clear they wanted her. Despite Tamamo's polite decline, they kept on insisting till the point Amaterasu herself made it clear she was off limits with a show of power that got them to back off. It probably put a dent in the relationship between their pantheons, but Amaterasu stood her ground before threatening that if they came near Tamamo she would kill them and the rest of Olympus. Naturally, having the strongest Shinto goddess threaten you was enough to instill fear in even gods. A sudden groan grabbed both women's attention. Looking at the source of the sound, they saw Naruto slowly wake up as his eyes fluttered open. Both Amaterasu and Inari watched as he glanced downwards before he brought his hands up and proceeded to run his fingers through her hair. A small smile formed on his lips, unknown to the two, mimicking Tamamo's, whose fingers digged into his sides. You really are adorable, he mumbled, still unaware of the two people watching them. Oh my, you weren't lying when you said they were totally into each other, Ama-chan. Inari commented as she nudged the woman in her side. Naruto snapped his head towards their direction, his blue eyes making contact with Amaterasu's golden ones before moving on to the woman standing next to her and raised an eyebrow. The woman standing next to her was slightly shorter than Amaterasu and had long silver hair or white depending on how the lights were shining down upon her. Ember eyes much like Tamamo's own except with slitted pupils. What mainly got his attention were the pair of white fox ears she had on top of her head, and the long 9 white tails that came out of her back and underneath the white kimono she wore. Focusing his senses on the woman, he noticed she had a similar aura to Amaterasu's own, which, taking in account where he was, made him have a good idea on who this woman was that seemed to be gazing intensely at him. Inari, I take it? He asked as he glanced at Amaterasu, who nodded in response. Correct, Naruto-kun, she came here to see you. Inari took the opportunity to enter the room and casually made her way towards him, humming along the way as her eyes stayed on his form. Naruto was getting somewhat uncomfortable by her scrutinizing stare and looked at Amaterasu for help. The goddess merely smirked as she proceeded to watch how things play out. Oh my, such power I can sense inside of you, even larger than our own. Inari finally spoke up as she stopped at the foot of the bed. So potent and wild, like it could explode out of you any moment. She licked her lips as she stared at his uncovered chest where Tamamo's head was resting. I have to say I'm quite jealous. I wouldn't mind trading places with Tamamo-chan right now. Naruto blushed at both her words and her hungry stare. Thankfully he was saved, as at that moment Tamamo had decided to wake up. Morning, Naruto-sama. She chirped before letting loose a cute yawn. Good morning, Tamamo. He returned her greeting as he saw her tail rise and began to sway from side to side in response to his fingers that were still running through her soft hair. Glancing between Tamamo's tail and Inari's, he noticed that her single one was much thicker looking. Noticing him looking at something or someone else, Tamamo looked at where he was staring before her eyes widened as she sat, and she quickly bowed her head. Ah. Inari-sama, I'll relax, Tamamo-chan. Didn't I tell you to ease up on the sama stuff? The woman pouted at Tamamo, who sheepishly began to play with her own tail. Anyway, Amaterasu clapped her hands together and managed to get everyone to focus on her. How about we let these two lovebirds alone for a moment, so they can refresh themselves, as I have something to talk with both of you about. Both blushed at her words while Inari complied with Amaterasu's request, though she sent a wink at Naruto, who paid her no attention as instead he was focused on Tamamo, who was straddling him though seemingly unaware. She jumped lightly upon feeling his hands rest on her bare thighs just above the blue stockings she wore. Hey, sorry, Tamamo. He chuckled at her pouting expression and blushing cheeks. Well, let's get ourselves ready, Tamamo. Wouldn't want to upset Amaterasu now. Quickly Tamamo got off of him, though she had her head down as her blush was still present. Do you want me to wait here till you are done, or? He asked her as he motioned to the location of the bathroom. Ah, it's fine, Naruto-sama. You can come as well. Giving Tamamo a thankful nod, he got out of bed before following her inside the bathroom, where both cleaned themselves before locating Amaterasu, who wished to speak with them. Not even a half hour later, Naruto along with Tamamo were seated in what he presumed was Amaterasu's office. Sitting behind her desk opposite of them was Amaterasu, with Inari standing by her side. Both goddesses held in serious expression, quite opposite of the usual carefree one they sported, and it made Naruto turn serious as well. Tamamo, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to the apparent tension that was in the air, as instead of paying attention to either goddess, she was currently completely focused on Naruto instead. So how about we get started? Amaterasu began as she looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun, I'm afraid to tell you that the underworld is currently in lockdown. I didn't quite believe so myself when Inari first told me, but it has been confirmed that nobody can go in or out. I honestly have no idea why this is happening, so I can't help you any further with that. I see, Naruto replied after a moment of silence. Honestly, I'm not all that bothered with that. I'm not really looking forward to heading back down there. Lots and lots of bad memories are all that I will find there. I don't really have anyone waiting for me either. Like, they can live without me. My father knows I'm alive, which is all that matters, so they won't waste resources looking for me. Sirzechs and the rest can take care of themselves. Aside from them, there's not really anyone else I'm familiar with on a level that warrants for me to return. He scratched his cheek before a scowl formed on his face. Not to mention that if I were to return, no doubt the elders will keep pressuring me about when I'll get married or produce some offspring. TCH, those greedy assholes don't understand the meaning of no, regardless of how many I tell them. Unnoticed by him but not the goddesses, Tamamo narrowed her eyes in distaste of the idea of him getting married. Oh my, she's quite protective of him already. Both thought as they shared a look with the other before smirking in amusement. Which brings me to something I would like to ask from you. Here he locked eyes with Amaterasu. Blue eyes making contact with golden as he leaned slightly forward. After all of this, he waved his hand around. Was over. I was planning on traveling around. You know, discovering new places, meeting new people, just all kind of things to get my mind away from everything that has happened. The war, the underworld, and all those things which give me nothing but bad memories. And well, I was wondering if you would allow Tamamo to travel with me? Here he reached down before grasping Tamamo's hand in his, ignoring her blush at the sudden contact. I've grown quite fond of her over the weeks that I've been here in your care. I want to see if our relationship can grow into something more, you know. We can both see that she's completely in love with me, and I want to return those feelings as well. She's everything I could ask for in a partner. Sure, those devils downstairs will probably be upset with their pureblood crap, but I never cared about their ramblings, and let's be honest, they can't force me. So, what do you say? Amaterasu closed her eyes as he finished speaking. She processed the words just spoken to her and suppressed the urge to smile as Naruto had finally admitted to liking Tamamo. She felt happy for her. After all these years, Tamamo finally found the person that had stolen her heart, a person whom she could see was good for her, a match made in heaven, so to say. Well, except that Naruto was a devil. She wanted nothing more than for the two of them to get together. Oh. She could already imagine what their children would look like. However, Amaterasu had an offer for both of them. Something she had been thinking about ever since he had arrived here in Takamagahara. An offer that would please both of them, so with that she opened her eyes. I see nothing wrong with that. In fact, I fully support your interest in traveling the world with Tamamo. But I have an offer to make you that might interest you both. One that helps both you and me. An offer? Naruto repeated with an raised eyebrow, absent-mindedly enjoying Tamamo's fingers which were trailing circles on his hand as he hadn't let go of her. What might this offer be? Here Amaterasu leaned forward, fingers intertwined and hands resting just before her lips as she hummed. Yes, an offer. I want you two to work for me. She raised an hand signaling she wasn't finished. Before you reply, let me explain what I mean by that. By working for me I mean that you are allowed to travel with Tamamo, but I will, on occasion or whenever required, ask you two to do something for me. Whether this is to check somewhere to make sure everything is going okay, to represent me for when I'm unavailable, to capture someone, be they devil, angel, fallen or somebody else should they pose a threat, and last but not least to act as my guards when I have to attend certain meetings. That is what I'm asking of you. I don't mind really. It would be nice to do well something else every now and then. I also enjoy staying here as it's just so peaceful and really clears my mind. Not to mention that it aligns with my interest in traveling and meeting new people. So I'm fine with it as long as Tamamo is too. Naruto replied without a moment wasted. Said Kitsune perked up as the attention shifted from him to her. I wouldn't mind either, Naruto-sama. If you think it's okay then I think so as well, she answered after a moment. Naruto didn't show it, but inwardly he pouted at her submissive behavior at how she agreed to whatever he asked. Something to work on during their travels, he mused. Make her more independent, and willing to form her own choices when asked something. But for now it was okay. She was most likely still getting used to him being more affectionate, and that he wanted to return her feelings. Hearing her answer he turned back to Amaterasu. There you go. We both accept your offer. Great. When will you be leaving so I can get some things ready to take with you? Just some papers so you two will be able to represent me without any trouble when necessary. Naruto furrowed his eyebrows as he thought about it. Glancing at Tamamo he saw her shrug at him, indicating that she was fine whenever he wanted to leave. Finally, after thinking about it, he answered. We'll stay here for another week before heading off. Mainly so Tamamo can say goodbyes, as it is harder for her to leave since she has been living here for several decades. Tamamo blushed at his words and the fact that he cared enough about her that he was willing to give her time. It felt nice to be treated like this. A feeling she could get used to. Thank you, Naruto-sama. She spoke softly. You're welcome, Tamamo-chan. He replied softly with a bright smile. Her eyes widened at the affectionate suffix he added to her name, something he seemingly was unaware of. Her mind vaguely recalling having heard him call her that before, but the memory was foggy, so she was unsure. Regardless though, and judging by the smiles Amaterasu and Inari sported, they heard it as well, the former even giving her a thumbs up while nodding her head. Her already fast-beating heart increased in pace as he stood up and brought her along. He pulled her close to him, their hands still locked together as he stared at her from the corner of his eyes. He smiled at her, which she returned before watching as his face leaned closer to hers. She understood what was going to happen after experiencing this before, and closer her eyes. Just as her eyes closed she felt his lips make contact with her cheek before, just like before, he pulled back, eyes opening as her amber orbs gazed at him with such adoration Naruto couldn't help himself as he pulled her closer to his own body. The hand which previously held her hand was now placed around her waist. She blushed at the contact but did nothing except lean closer to him as his body gave off an welcoming warmth. Probably because he was half phoenix, as she knew even Yukai didn't give off half the heat he was unconsciously releasing. The two left the office, leaving behind Amaterasu and Inari, the latter of which sent a questioning look to her friend as she sat down on the desk. Now Amaterasu, what are you planning? What do you mean, Inari-chan? Amaterasu replied while feigning ignorance, which did not work in the slightest. Pouting at her friend's behavior she spoke. You know what I'm talking about. Is it smart to let them act in your/our stead? I see what you mean. I can tell you right now, Inari, that I have my utmost trust in Naruto. You saw it as well, didn't you? All he wants is to stay away from the underworld, possibly from any obligations he might have. You might not have seen it, but I did. She looked her fellow goddess in the eyes. He's tired, Inari-chan. For someone as him who's practically immortal to lose their will to live, I can't imagine what it's like. Tamamo is his light, she's what's stopping him from going down a path nobody wants. The offer I gave them helps both of us. It keeps them from getting bored, as while I'm sure they'll be traveling a lot, eventually that gets stale. Aside from that, it allows me to see Tamamo as I care about her deeply. Lastly, we gain a powerful ally with Naruto. You might not have seen it, but I did, and I can tell you right now his power is beyond anything I have seen before. Even from this far, both Tamamo and I could feel his energy reach us, Inari. The dragons themselves stated that Naruto-kun and Sirzechs are by far the strongest devils that have lived. With the biblical god now dead, the devils are currently the strongest of the three big factions, and I doubt that will change anytime soon, if ever. She looked to see if she was still paying attention before continuing. When she did, we both could see Naruto-kun is destined for great things. What those might be, who knows, but I want him on friendly terms when that happens, and what better way to have them work with us? Inari mulled over what she was just told before slowly nodding. And what about Tamamo? Where does she exactly fit in all of this? Yes, I know what you said before, but there has to be more to it. Amaterasu smiled. Of course, Tamamo being almost raised by me, I've come to see the young Kitsune as a daughter of sorts. While she's also a yokai, she doesn't have any ties with the faction aside from being one, of course. In union between Tamamo and a powerful devil such as Naruto will help us make ties with devils in general, while also keeping away any potential enemies. After all, anyone would think twice about fighting him if not abstaining against an opponent capable of even defeating gods. Oh my, you've really thought this through, didn't you? Don't get me wrong, I truly care about Tamamo and wish the two together even without any planning, but this helps us Shinto gods as well. A win-win situation, I'd say. Inari hummed but could see her point. I was skeptical at first, but now I can see where you're coming from. Let's just hope it doesn't bite us in the ass. It won't, Amaterasu replied confidently. I saw for a brief moment his eyes narrowing. No doubt he knows what I'm planning, or at least a part of it. He didn't say anything about it though. Why? Even I'm not sure, to be honest, perhaps because he doesn't mind, or because he knows that when it comes to it there's not much we can do. Or he could do it to please Tamamo, as he knows she cares a lot about me and in proxy our pantheon. As she finished speaking, Inari hopped off of Amaterasu's desk before walking towards the door. It was nice speaking to you, Ama-chan. Unfortunately though, I have an important appointment in Kyoto regarding internal matters that require my attention. I'll be sure to drop by a few times this week and try to talk a bit more with Naruto and attempt to form some sort of relationship, as I'm sure my earlier actions didn't help to paint me in a good picture. No, they did not. Amaterasu deadpanned at her before Inari shrugged her shoulders and left her alone inside her office. She sighed as she leaned back in the chair she was sitting on before retrieving several papers. Now, time to get those papers ready for both of them, she mumbled with a frown as she got to work. She'd rather see what those two were up to, but alas, the trouble of being a goddess. Are you alright? Naruto asked with concern lacing his voice as he sat down onto the bed next to Tamamo, who was staring at her hands. Huh? Oh yes, I'm fine, Naruto-sama, she replied after a moment before she went back to staring at her hands. Naruto frowned as he didn't believe her for a second. Never before had she not immediately replied to anything he asked her, as usually all her attention was on him. So hearing her silent for even a moment was enough to warrant his concern, as he had quickly sat down with her. After a moment of silence, Naruto had enough and wrapped his arms around her before lifting her up and placing her in his lap. His arms circled her waist as he made sure not to hurt her tail. Come on, Tamamo-chan, I don't believe you for a second. You normally never wait to answer my questions. So tell me what's wrong. Is it me, or does it have anything to do with leaving Takamagahara? She stiffened in his grasp for a brief moment, but it was enough to know he was correct. Naruto sighed as he removed one of his hands in favor for running it through his hair. He wondered what he was supposed to say to make her stop sulking. He did not like this version of Tamamo. He preferred the cheerful, bubbly, and sometimes even goofy Tamamo, as he himself couldn't feel depressed seeing her like this. Her mood affected his own more than he realized. Deciding to be bold and seeing it as the quickest way to get rid of her depression, he turned her in his lap before planting his lips on her. Caught off guard by the sudden movement, Tamamo had no time to react as something slightly moist and soft impacted with her lips. She blinked before her amber eyes widened as they stared into cerulean blue before they trailed down to his lips that were now connected to her own. She felt one of his hands tenderly run across her tail, while the other rested on the small of her back. This kiss, it was different from before. She could feel the emotions he was conveying through their lip lock. It was intense, overwhelming, even as she closed her eyes and felt him deep in the kiss. It was everything she imagined and more. Eventually though, and much to her displeasure, he broke their lip lock and she leaned back. Her hands were resting on his shoulders as she sent him a confused look and pouted with her now slightly swollen pink lips. Don't sulk, it doesn't suit you. He gently scolded her before leaning closer once more and pecked her on her nose. We can always return here whenever you want or feel homesick. I don't mind as long as it makes you happy, okay? Tamamo stared at him for a moment before she slowly nodded. Her tail wrapped itself around him from behind her, and he couldn't help but laugh softly at the fluffy appendage which seemed to have a mind of its own. You want to do something today, or are we just going to stay like this? Not that I mind or anything, he mumbled as he held her close. Her fox ears twitched at the feel of his hot breath as her head was resting against his chest. I don't mind either, Naruto-sama. Though I would like to stay like this for at least a bit longer. That's fine with me, my dear Kitsune. He twisted himself around slightly before allowing himself to fall onto the bed. Tamamo was brought with him but didn't seem to mind, as she was content as long as he would hold her like he did, and hold her he did, as for the rest of the day they stayed like this, just taking comfort in the other's presence and the knowledge they cared for another. Finally it was time. A week had passed and now Tamamo and Naruto were ready to leave. Tamamo had spent most of the week in company of Amaterasu, with Naruto tagging along every now and then. Aside from that, he would occasionally hang out with Inari whenever she would drop by. Amaterasu had finished and handed over all the papers that they would be needing, and Naruto made sure to keep it in a safe place, which happened to be a pocket dimension he was able to form with the help of the goddess, as it had to do with all sorts of kanji he was not familiar with. Though he couldn't be blamed, as Amaterasu herself told him it was Shinto magic which made use of kanji placed in certain spots to form a formula, and allowed the user to do incredible things. from controlling elements to making barriers and even personal dimensions/pocket dimensions like he had done. It pretty much depended on the person's imagination. Unfortunately, though, it was also one of the harder branches of magic, and Naruto had to agree, as he was shown several pieces of work which looked more like art if he had to be honest. Tamamo apparently was well versed in that branch of magic, and he wondered if she would be willing to teach him about it during their travels. Snapping out of his thought, his eyes moved to his companion, who was currently being smothered by the sun goddess. Though, judging from how her tail was happily swaying from side to side, she seemed to be enjoying it. After a moment of embracing, the other Amaterasu was the first one to break their embrace, as she still held her hands. "It's time, Tamamo. Remember that you two are always welcome to visit when you wish to, so don't be a stranger, alright? I can see Naruto cares a lot about you, and that goes likewise for you. So make sure to look out for another, okay? Oh, while I'm sure you two would make cute babies, I think it would be best if you would wait with that for a while." Her last sentence had both Naruto and Tamamo blushing, which caused her to smirk. "No, but seriously, I'm not ready to become a grandmother." Her tone conveying her words as she sent Naruto a narrowed-eyed look. Letting go of Tamamo, she took a few steps before stopping in front of Naruto, who had to look down in order to make eye contact with her. "If I hear that you made Tamamo-chan cry, we will have problems regardless of your strength, okay?" She finished by poking him in the chest, absent-mindedly noticing how muscled he really was. While she had seen him shirtless, only Tamamo had actually gotten to feel just how hard they actually felt. Naruto looked amused by her threat, but nodded nonetheless. "You have my word that I will do my utmost best to take care of Tamamo and protect her with my life," he said with conviction as they locked gazes for a few seconds. Seemingly satisfied with what she saw, her gaze softened before she pulled him in a hug as well, successfully surprising him before he quickly hugged her back. "It's time," she mumbled before she reluctantly let go and stepped back as Tamamo took her place next to Naruto. He placed her hand in his own before a glow encompassed their forms, which slowly got brighter and brighter before it was gone, and so were the two people who stood previously before her. She stared at the spot they previously occupied for a while before releasing a sigh. They were gone, back on Earth for now. She turned around and made her way back in her temple, humming along the way. They were not even a minute gone yet she already missed both of them. Blue eyes peered into the morning sun, which slowly began to rise as it started illuminating the earth in a warm morning glow. The way it shone light down upon the snow, and in turn giving it the appearance like he was looking at an endless field of diamonds, made for an amazing sight. The sound of feet shuffling across the floor reached his ears, yet he didn't move. His eyes kept focused on the orange ball in the distance that broke through the early clouds even as he felt a smaller body press up against him. "Morning, Tamamo-chan, you're up early," Naruto eventually said as he turned his head slightly and greeted her. However, as he turned to the side, he was treated to the sight of Tamamo completely covered in blankets, with the exceptions being her face and her tail that peeked out from behind. "Cute," he mumbled, which she heard as she tightened the covers around her in an attempt to hide herself. Chuckling softly, he wrapped an arm around her as he held her close, using his abnormal body heat to keep her warm and comfortable. "Say Tamamo, HM?" said woman looked up from his comforting hold he had over her, curiosity twinkling in her amber eyes. "How long has it been since we've been gone? Since we've last seen Amaterasu?" "I'm not sure, Naruto-kun," she mumbled against him, and he smiled at the suffix added to his name. It took him a while, but eventually he managed to get her to stop adding the sama suffix behind his name. Though it was mostly due to his insistence when they officially began dating, as he didn't like her addressing him as her master but rather her partner, her companion. "I see." He leaned down and kissed the part of her face that was visible. "How about you go back to bed? I can tell you're still tired, and I'll join you in a bit." Tamamo opened her mouth to reply, only for her to let out a cute yawn instead. "Okay." She turned around, her bushy tail softly tracing his face as she released soft giggles before she went back inside. Once he was left alone, he took a deep breath as he could feel the sun peering down at him. Obviously, Amaterasu used it as a medium to listen in on their conversation. "We'll be there sometime later." He waved lazily at the sun before he turned around and got ready to join Tamamo, who had probably fallen back to sleep. It was later in the day as Naruto and Tamamo exited the inn they had been staying in for the past couple of days. Naruto took a deep breath of fresh air, which in turn turned visible with the cold temperature outside. He frowned as he looked to his side where Tamamo stood. She wore her usual blue witchcraft clothes with over it a long and thick fur coat in order to keep her warm. "Are you sure you're not cold?" he asked her with concern. Despite her being a yukai, she could still feel cold, unlike him who could have just worn a sleeveless shirt if he wished to. Though he didn't, as it would only get them unwanted attention if he were to walk around in a t-shirt in sub-freezing temperatures outside, so he had settled on wearing a kimono. "I am fine," she replied with slight stutter as she shivered from underneath the hood she had put on to preserve as much heat as she could. Naruto frowned at the blatant lie but didn't say a thing. He knew she was trying to appear tough, and if she wanted to, who was he to stop her? He would make sure to step in if it became too much for her, though. Pulling her close, they walked a couple hundred feet, just enough to be far away from the inn and any people, as a teleportation circle formed underneath them. It glowed for a second before the two were gone. Tamamo blinked as they appeared in the familiar surroundings of Takamagahara. A smile formed as Amaterasu stood there waiting for them. The goddess wasted no time as she made her way over and pulled her in a hug. Tamamo! Oh, how I've missed you! Amaterasu squealed as Tamamo was quickly overwhelmed by the woman's enthusiasm. Naruto watched with thin-veiled amusement as Amaterasu shook his companion around. Deciding enough was enough, he stepped forward. Amaterasu, would you mind releasing her? I don't think she'll last much longer otherwise. Hearing his warning, she quickly let go of Tamamo, who hastily stepped closer to Naruto, who patted her between her ears as the hood she wore had come off during the greeting. Well then, Amaterasu cleared her throat once. It's great to see you both. Either of you have aged a day since last time. She joked, which was met with two deadpan stares, making her blush in embarrassment. Seeing as my humor isn't appreciated, I'll get straight to the point, I guess. Tamamo-chan, can you go ahead? There's certain things I need to talk with your boyfriend about. A blush formed on her cheeks at how she addressed Naruto, still not completely used to how others labeled their relationship. Oh, okay, Amaterasu-sama. She left before said goddess could scold her for using the sama suffix. Once she made sure she was nowhere near them, Amaterasu turned around, a serious expression having appeared on her face. Say, Naruto-kun, have you been paying attention to what has happened in the underworld the past few years? She asked him. Naruto raised an eyebrow before shaking his head negative. No, I haven't. Why? I have no interest in what's going on down there, and I'm pretty sure I told you that before. You did, but Amaterasu glanced nervously at him. I still think it's important for you to know what has been going on since the last time you've been there. Ugh, very well. I guess some knowledge wouldn't hurt. He reasoned with a heavy sigh. Amaterasu smiled. Yes, well, let's start with the reason the underworld was in a lockdown those years ago. Naruto raised an eyebrow, showing he was indeed interested in knowing the cause. Apparently, shortly after the war ended, a civil war started amongst the devils. From what I understand, after the death of God and the four Satans, a ceasefire was declared as the original reason for the war had been killed. Both heaven and underworld agreed, which automatically made the fallen agree as well. While most were happy the war was over, others were not. Those who weren't were descendants of the original Satans who wished to continue, as without God on their side heaven would stand no chance, especially against the likes of Sirzechs, and yourself, though you weren't there. This caused a divide between the devils, where there was one side who wished for peace and was named the New Satan Faction against those who wished to continue their conquest, whom were labeled as Old Satan Faction. Here is where it gets interesting. Leading the New Satan Faction were none other than Sirzechs, Seraphol, Ajuka and Falbium, due to their immense demonic energy compared to other devils. Together those four lead their faction to victory by killing all remaining descendants who wished to continue, with the exception a couple that managed to escape the apparent slaughter. It was evident which side was going to win from the beginning, given that Ajuka and Sirzechs are on a completely different level compared to even Seraphol, who already is one of the strongest devils alive. After the civil war ended with the New Satan Faction coming out victorious, new Satans were chosen. I'm sure you can already guess who they picked? Amaterasu asked, and he nodded. Sirzechs, Ajuka, Seraphol and Falbium, though the latter might be wrong, as I remember the man being too lazy for a position like that one. Amaterasu giggled. No, you're correct, Naruto-kun. Sirzechs is the new Lucifer, yes, Lucifer. He no longer is the heir to the Gremry family. Ajuka is the new Beelzebub, Seraphol is the new Leviathan, and Falbium the new Asmodeus. I see, that's interesting, I guess. Wonder what would have happened had I been there as well. Ah yes, speaking of that, Amaterasu began nervously. It seems that my message I sent to Lord Bayo wasn't received due to the civil war happening during that time. Sirzechs, once he was given the position as Lucifer, wasted no time, and has sent out numerous search parties to look for you on insistence of your father. She sighed softly. They want you back, Naruto-kun. You're very valuable both as the heir of the Bayo clan and your unique abilities. I'm sure they want you to reproduce already, especially with the loss of several devil houses due to the war, and in their eyes you're too powerful to be missing. They know you are still out there, and rumors have it elders are pressuring Sirzechs into putting you on a wanted list for abandoning your duty. TCH, how typical of them. Those old men shouldn't put their nose in other people's business, or one of these days it's going to cost them. He muttered in annoyance. Amaterasu grabbed his hand with her own and began to softly rub circles with her thumb in an attempt to calm him. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the gesture but didn't move away, as it was actually working. Taking a few breaths to quell his rising anger, he looked at the woman holding his hand. What do you suggest I do? I can't really barge in the underworld. Actually I can, but I doubt that'll be a good idea. I could try to talk to my father, but knowing him, he would be against it, and try his hardest to get me to accept the leadership of the clan and subsequently get some pure-blooded devil to marry me, and I don't want that. You know the Bayo clan is all about pure blood, and I can already see what will happen once they see that Tamamo, who I love, is anything but a devil. It will no doubt ruin our reputation, and I can't do that. Ugh. This is so frustrating. He growled out. Not to mention that I wouldn't put it past those pesky elders to hire someone to assassinate Tamamo when I'm not around. You know, I haven't sensed any devils in a while, to be honest, which is weird since they apparently are looking for me, and last time I checked it wasn't very hard to sense my enormous magic reserves even with me actively suppressing them as much as I can. Amaterasu hummed, and though before her eyes lit up as she looked at him with an idea what might have caused it. It might have something to do with Tamamo, whose scent is overpowering yours. I'm also actively aiding you with hiding your signature, Something Inari-chan suggested, as long as you're in Japan, which is how far my influence can reach. Really? I knew you could use the sun as a medium of sorts, but not what exactly you were capable of. Let's head inside and continue our little conversation. Inari should be present as well, as she looked forward to seeing you again. While there we can discuss why I called you here for as well. Seeing no reason to decline her, he shrugged before motioning for her to lead. Neither noticing that she was still holding his hand with her own. Really? Sounds like you two had a lot of fun. Inari commented as she, along with Amaterasu, listened to both of them tell stories what happened during their travels, though those stories made Amaterasu remember something else she'd like to address. Naruto-kun? The blonde looked at her with a raised eyebrow before signaling for her to continue. Can you please explain why the Greek pantheon is demanding your head for something that has happened between you and Ares? Naruto narrowed his eyes in thought as he tried to remember what might have happened between them. Both Inari and Amaterasu watched as his blue eyes quickly turned cold and a shiver went down their spine due to it. Tamamo had a frown as she too remembered that man and what he tried to do, as she unconsciously pressed herself a tad bit closer to him. Are you sure that's what they want? The way he asked that question made it clear that a wrong move was all that it would take to get on his bad side. Why, yes. Amaterasu shook her head as she scolded herself for stuttering. That's what they want to know, demanded from me, or else. Or else what? Nothing, that's how they worded it. Naruto scoffed. Ho? Well, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Ares had it coming as the arrogant fucker tried to force Tamamo into doing something she did not want to. Heh, fool thought he would stand a chance against me. He chuckled, amused. You should have seen him once I was done with him. Cocky little brat could barely be recognized even with his advanced healing. I was honestly debating on whether or not I should kill him then and there, but luckily for him Tamamo was able to stop me. He turned serious as he stared straight at Amaterasu. Tell Zeus or whomever that if he wants my head, so to speak, he should get it himself, though I might blow up Olympus on accident, and if I see Ares once more I will eradicate him from existence along with every time he reforms. His voice reflected his eyes, which were almost capable of freezing the goddess of the sun herself. That thunderhead isn't capable doing so himself, as everyone knows Hades is the strongest of the Greek gods, so unless he comes down here personally I'll let him throw his little temper tantrum up there. I see, I will let them know that that's your answer. Good, for good measure feel free to let them know just who it is they are having this little spat with, so they know I can make my threat a reality. He clapped his hands together as the tension that had formed during his little speech disappeared. Now how about you tell us why you wanted us here? Oh yes, I almost forget, Amaterasu chuckled as the rest sweat dropped at her. In a few days I will be heading out to Kyoto to discuss certain agreements in order to continue giving the Yukai our support. Inari will be with me as well, though I'd like for you two to come with me too. It will be a good opportunity to have Tamamo meet other Yukai and introduce you two properly. Naruto and Tamamo shared a glance before the former turned to the sun goddess. That's fine with us. To be honest, we were planning on heading to Kyoto next, so this works out perfectly. Good. Amaterasu murmured. How about you two head out to your room? It's the same one as you had last time you've been here, while I get someone to prepare us some food. I'm sure you're all quite hungry. As if that was some unseen signal, Naruto's stomach made itself known as it growled, much to his embarrassment. Fine. Actually, he looked at Tamamo. How about you go ahead? I have some personal things to ask these two. Tamamo looked at him for a moment before nodding her head. Okay, don't be gone for too long, alright? Naruto nodded back before kissing her on the lips, earning a smile from her as she stood up and walked off. What did you want to ask us? Inari spoke up as her ivory tails casually swayed behind her. Naruto took a deep breath before he began explaining about these weird dreams he had been experiencing the past months. I had these type of dreams, if not outright nightmares, before, haunting me for years, but eventually went away after meeting Tamamo. I had nothing but pleasant nights of sleep for a long time with her next to me, but out of nowhere it suddenly changed. He frowned before continuing. I find myself suddenly awake in this endless white room. I guess that's how I would describe it. Anyway, the problem is that each time I'm not alone. There's this man, he's old, or at least appears old. He has pale skin with shoulder-length, spiky brown hair and horns protruding from his forehead. Yeah, I'm not sure either, but aside from that he's clad in a long white kimono with several black magatama around the collar. Though the most interesting feature are the man's eyes. They're purple with rings, or rather ripples, in them. What bothers me the most is the man's stare, which is always focused on me. It's like he's sorry for something while at the same time expectant. He looked at both Inari and Amaterasu to see both paying rapt attention to his words. That's pretty much all there is. I don't know who he is, and I know I've never seen someone like that man before, as his unique features would make it hard to forget. So I'm asking if either of you know who this person is, as from his appearance I would have guessed he belonged to the Shinto pantheon. The two goddesses were silent for a moment before Inari spoke. Naruto-kun, did this person ever told you his name? He shook his head. No, all he did was stare at me with those weird eyes of his. Inari and Naruto blinked before looking to her left, where Amaterasu was, who had gotten quiet all of a sudden. Ama-chan? Is everything alright? Inari's voice shook her out of her trance. Why yes, why? She tried to act as normal as she could, but it failed spectacularly. I have to look over something I almost forgot. Whoops. She quickly withdrew herself as she walked off. Both Devil and Kyubi looked at another with confusion visible in their eyes on what just happened. I'm going to check up on Amaterasu, she drawled before quickly running after her. He stared at her retreating form for a few seconds before making his way to where he could sense Tamamo was at. A couple days later, Amaterasu, Inari, Naruto, and Tamamo could be seen entering Kyoto. It had been a few days since Amaterasu's weird behavior, though she returned to her usual self by the time dinner was served. Naruto had no idea why she had acted that way, but knew Inari had helped in getting her to act normal. Aside from that, Naruto and Tamamo had spent the days just hanging out with both goddesses who enjoyed their company. Though they both had to endure their endless teasing about when they were going to get married and when they could expect babies. So now they were here in Kyoto, Naruto having suppressed his demonic energy to the best of his ability on Inari's advice, as yokai aren't too fond of other races with the exception of humans. Halt! Who are you? A muffled, male voice spoke up as a pair of armored guards walked up to their small group. Amaterasu Amikami and Inari Okami here to discuss arrangements with Kurama Dano. Upon mentioning their names, both guards immediately bowed their heads. Forgive us for not recognizing you, Amaterasu Dano, Inari Dano, they pleaded. Both women laughed softly before motioning them to stand. Please, it's all right. We didn't send out a notice in advance, so either of us will blame you. The guards sighed in relief before their suspicion returned in full force as they eyed the couple standing behind them. The male more so, as they could sense a faint demonic aura coming from him, whereas the woman next to him smelled of Kitsune, and both could sense chakra from her. What is a devil doing here? They asked, or rather demanded, and looked at either goddess for answer. Please calm yourself. They're here as visitors while the man is my guard. Hearing Amaterasu's words, they turned their attention back to the blonde male of the group, who upon noticing their disbelieving gaze briefly stopped suppressing his energy, and let his presence wash all over them. Naruto took silent pleasure in watching both guards almost fall to their knees as their senses were being assaulted by more demonic energy either had felt in their life. A nudge to his side courtesy of Tamamo got him to suppress his power back to where it was barely noticeable as both guards staggered to their feet. The grip on their weapons tightened after that experience, and their looks of disbelief were replaced by one of fear. Sorry for that, he doesn't like when somebody questions his capabilities. Inari apologized for him. Would you willing to let us enter, please? Why, yes. Both bowed once more. We will notify Kurama Dano of your presence here in Kyoto. I would like for you to keep your guard close by, as not many yokai are a fan of devils. Amaterasu waved his concerns off. That won't be a problem, right, Naruto? Yes, Amaterasu. Naruto spoke up for the first time. As your guard, I need to stay close to you anyway. Satisfied, Amaterasu gave both guards a smile as they parted the way for them to enter. Once they were out of view, they looked at another, sent a message to Kurama Dano and the other guards to keep an eye on the devil but make sure none of them attempts anything. I doubt we can survive if someone were to foolishly attack him. Not after feeling his power, I still feel my legs shaking. The other man wasted no time as he nodded before walking inside a small booth nearby and sent out a message using a small bird. As the group of four walked through the streets of Kyoto, they quickly caught the attention of everyone there. Though the attention went mainly to Naruto, who stood out the most with his sun-kissed blonde hair and the fact that he was a few inches taller than anyone they walked past. Murmurs spread amongst the numerous yokai as they could sense his suppressed demonic energy, though most were focused more on the Kitsune yokai, who had her fingers intertwined with his. Though she only had a single tail, Tamamo was much more powerful than any single-tailed Kitsune would or could ever be. Something others had noticed as they watched her big and fluffy tail peek out beneath her fur coat. She wore her hood, which kept her face hidden, with only a few strands of her peach-pink hair being shown. A few remarks were made towards the two, as yokai devil couples were practically unheard of. Yokai could be even more elite with regards to how pure their blood was than devils, if that was possible. They kept their distance from the three big factions, and even human yokai couples were rare to see and often looked down on. Feeling Tamamo increase her grip on his hand, he glared at some of the people looking at them, his eyes flashing from blue to red as he released a small, in his opinion at least, pulse of demonic energy. Enough for the yokai to feel a shiver run down their spine. Tamamo smiled as she felt him press her closer to him. She let her tail wrap around him before they continued their walk towards an inn Amaterasu told them they would stay at for as long as they would be here. After a few more minutes of walking, they arrived at an inn before entering. Amaterasu and Inari first, with them quickly behind. Upon entering, they immediately noticed how warm it was compared to outside, and Tamamo quickly pulled back the hood she had over her head, allowing everyone to see her face. Her pink hair that flowed freely and perfectly framed her face, along with the orange fox ears that peeked out of her hair on top of her head, gave her a cute appearance. The attention from several yokai inside quickly went to her, and Tamamo stepped a bit closer to Naruto, clearly uncomfortable by their stares. Naruto pulled her in an embrace, clearly letting everyone know she was taken, while Amaterasu and Inari were busy getting them their rooms. A few moments later, after speaking with the owner, Amaterasu and Inari walked over to them, the latter dangling a pair of keys in her hand, one of which she gave to Naruto. Your room is located next to ours with the number etched on the key, Amaterasu said. Let's go to our rooms before meeting back here. And remember that you shouldn't run off somewhere without us. At least not until we meet with the current leader tomorrow in order to clear things up. She looked at Naruto, who rolled his eyes but nodded nonetheless. Sure. He broke his embrace of Tamamo but kept her hand in his. Let's go, Tamamo-chan, see you two later. Amaterasu and Inari stood there for a while before realizing they had nothing to do either, as the meeting wasn't until tomorrow, so with that they too headed to their shared room. The next day the group of 4 was led through several hallways as they made their way towards the meeting room. Amaterasu and Inari were wearing formal kimonos while Tamamo wore her blue witchcraft outfit, which garnered some perverse glances from some of the guards walking along with them. Though a single look from Naruto got them to quickly tear their gaze away. He himself wore a thick black robes with a couple red frills going down the sleeves and collar. Guards walked on each of their sides. A lot more than usual, Amaterasu and Inari had noticed. No doubt they were afraid by Naruto's presence, as he was somewhat of a wild card here. They knew either Shinto goddesses would attempt anything, but they could never be too sure with the devil. As they passed a slightly open door, he glanced inside only to stare straight into a pair of golden eyes similar to Tamamo's. It was barely a second, but he had gotten a good look of the person who was there. A young girl no older than 12, he would put her. Long blonde hair put in a ponytail, while wearing a small red kimono. He noticed her golden fox ears and managed to spot at least 3 tails swishing behind her before he was forced to look away as they continued their walk. Said girl in question opened the door a tad bit more before peeking her head out and turned to the left in order to keep watching the group, though her attention was mostly on the blonde male of the 4 before they turned the corner and walked out of her view. Naruto sighed in relief after they finally arrived after walking for what seemed like forever. While he usually had no problems walking long distances, the fact that it was through a bunch of boring hallways quickly dampened his mood. One of the guards up front knocked on the door before they heard a slightly muffled but clearly male voice telling them to enter. The door was opened as one by one they walked in. Amaterasu went inside first, while he entered last. Inside they spotted the man they had the meeting with. The current leader of Kyoto, who went by the name Kurama. The man had red hair which went down past his shoulders with matching eyes. He then spotted the man's red with black-tipped fox ears and 9 tails that were spread out behind them, clearly indicating that he was a Kyuubi. He also wore rather interesting yet dangerous-looking armor, and was releasing a malicious aura that could only be matched by some of the more powerful devils. Thank you for having us here, Kurama-dano. Amaterasu greeted the yokai with respect. You already know me and Inari. The fox goddess bowed slightly. While behind me are my guards Tamamo no Mae and Naruto Bale. Upon hearing the Naruto's name, Kurama's eyes snapped towards the blonde male only for his eyes to widen to their extremes as he took in the blonde man's features. Amaterasu and Inari wrote off his look due to being surprised at his identity, as she saw the guards in the room each having the same expression as well upon knowing just who it was that was in the room with them, some already silently praying for staring at Tamamo before. While they were all focused on him, Naruto on the other hand had his blue eyes glued on the symbol hanging on the wall behind the yokai leader, a purple circle with several ripples running through it. The same one that the weird-looking man's eyes had in his dreams. Man, that was really boring. Naruto first spoke up the moment they exited the meeting room. His choice of words got him a light slap against his arm by Tamamo, who gave a playful glare making him cower and take a step closer to Amaterasu and Inari, who giggled at the sight of the powerful devil being bossed around. Tamamo Naruto whined quite pitifully as the Kitsune yokai huffed in return. A sly smirk suddenly graced his face before he wrapped her in his arms, catching her off guard as she was unable to move. Tamamo wiggled in an attempt to escape, her protests muffled due to her face being buried in his clothing. Feeling her cease to resist after a moment, he pulled her back enough to look down and see a pout gracing her pretty face. Her ears twitching lightly as a faint blush dusted her cheeks. Surprising her, he reached down before scooping her up in his arms, eliciting a surprised squeal from Tamamo as she found herself being carried like a princess. It was Naruto who was surprised this time, as instead of attempting to break free she snuggled into him, relishing in the warmth he gave off. As they walked like that towards the inn, Naruto, carrying Tamamo with Inari and Amaterasu on each of his sides, he spoke up. Say, Amaterasu, Inari, can you tell me a bit more about Kurama? Both goddesses looked at each other before at him with a single eyebrow raised. Oh? Did something catch your attention? To their surprise he nodded his head and spoke with a serious tone that caught them off guard. Yes, I did. Hanging behind him on the wall was a symbol, a purple circle with black rings going through it. The exact same as the eyes belonging to that man in my dreams. That's not even mentioning the aura he was releasing. It felt just way too evil to belong to a yokai, you know. Like, even devils would be hard-pressed to release a similar aura like Kurama had. Tamamo here has a completely opposite aura that's so welcoming and calming, with an underline of power that's such a contrast compared to his. Well, Amaterasu began. All that's known is that he's been Kyoto's leader for over a century. Nobody knows exactly how old he is, as he usually just gives a vague answer if one would ask. Aside from that, Inari told me that one day he just suddenly arrived in Kyoto. Of course he was immediately accepted after all. He's a Kyuubi, which are known as the strongest, and like you said, he had this aura around him that pretty much demands respect from others around him. Apparently, but I don't know if this is true, the previous leader had groomed him for leadership shortly after his arrival and is the only one who knows more about him. Unfortunately though, the previous leader had perished when defending a group of Nikomatas when a large group of fallen angels ambushed them. He was old though, easily several centuries, and as a result was no longer at his prime, which led to his demise, though that was after he managed to get every one of the Nikomatas to safety. His actions are one of the main reasons Nikomatas have settled in Kyoto even to this day, and while the previous leader is still praised for his actions to this day for bringing in many clans, none of the other yokai can deny that having Kurama as their leader has been the best thing that has happened to Kyoto as a whole. He's as strong as high ultimate class devils, easily capable of destroying entire cities with his unique Bijudama, which he had revealed is a compressed ball of pure chakra, a attack unique to only himself. He's capable of fighting off opponents as high as 10 winged angels and fallen, and even minor gods such as Ares will have a tough time fighting him. Interesting, so the aura isn't just intimidation factor, huh? Naruto mumbled mainly to himself, though it wasn't missed by either women. Well, it is, it's just much more effective against yokai who are able to sense his chakra. It helps with keeping challengers away, you know. After all, who wants to fight against a Kyuubi who reeks of blood and holds an aura that promises death? I wouldn't be opposed to it. Though if he's not even near Seraphal in strength, I don't see it worth my time, to be honest. He said with a casual shrug of his shoulders before noticing that they had already arrived back at the inn they were staying at. Entering the inn, he turned to Inari and Amaterasu. Tamamo and I will be in our room doing stuff. We'll be out in time to get some dinner so you two can look over the contract once more, he said before wishing them goodbye as he made his way to their shared room. Okay, that's fine, don't make too much noise though, there are other people staying here, Inari called out to him, taking pleasure in seeing him falter in his steps. Tamamo buried her face into his clothing in an attempt to hide herself from the looks sent their way courtesy of the fox goddess. Regaining his footing, he increased the pace before quickly entering their room and gently placing Tamamo on their bed. Turning around, he made sure to lock the door before looking through some papers where Tamamo had put silencing seals she had made yesterday. Finding it, he grabbed it before placing it on the door and then activating it using a small amount of demonic energy. Satisfied that he could no longer hear any sounds coming from outside, he turned around to see Tamamo removing her coat she wore over her regular outfit and began undoing his own robes before throwing them on the chair nearby before he made his way over to where she was lying on her stomach, her tail wagging back and forth. As he was just a feet away from her, he pounced at her, though careful enough not to hurt her tail, as the two rolled around in bed, their lips locked together as their hands were busy roaming over the other's body. Naruto groaned softly as his tongue met hers while his hands tenderly rubbed her sides as he was laying on his back with Tamamo straddling him. Her hands were resting on his shoulders as she broke the kiss for a brief moment to catch her breath as she quickly lowered her head back towards his, all while purring excitingly at the feel of his hands which were now massaging her bare thighs. Stopping just at her blue stockings before moving back up, shifting himself so he was now sitting on the bed with Tamamo still in his lap. His hands traveled upwards before they began tugging on the obi that kept her top secure in an attempt to remove it. Breaking the lip lock and leaving Tamamo panting heavily, he trailed down a trail of kisses to her neck before sucking and biting on a certain sensitive spot he knew she had, all while growling in slight annoyance, as her obi didn't want to come loose. Tamamo didn't notice his annoyance, as she enjoyed what he was doing to her as she ran her fingers through his blonde locks which felt like feathers to her touch. Feeling his canines slightly enter her skin, she whimpered as she was pulled out of her daze and could feel him tugging on her obi. Placing her hands back on his shoulders, she pushed him back, earning a confused look from the blonde, which she returned with a seductive smirk as she reached behind her and, much to his annoyance, loosened her obi with a single flick of her wrist. Naruto propped himself up using his elbows, eyes watching intently as she removed her chest piece, revealing her naked skin with the exception of her which were covered by bandages. He remembered the first time he saw her like this. He was honestly surprised with just big her were, as her outfit kept them secured quite well, the chest wrappings giving the illusion they were much smaller than they actually were. Undoing her bandages with a small blush as she noticed his intense stare which was focused on her face instead of her, she let them free, though quickly covered them with her arm as she threw the bindings to the side. Naruto leaned up, tasting her supple lips once more as one of his hands grabbed the one covering her before pulling it to the side. He broke the kiss as blue eyes stared into amber ones, their foreheads resting against the other as both were breathing heavily. Beautiful as ever, he breathed out as he quickly pecked her lips, making her pout cutely as she was unable to savor his lips. His words were true as he just stared at her. His hand came up and cupped her cheek. She was perfect. He loved everything about her and was not afraid to tell her that. From the moment he laid his eyes on her, he knew that they were perfect for another. Like yin and yang, they completed each other. I love you, Tamamo, now and forever. He smiled softly as he saw a single tear trickle down from her eye. A tear that signified her happiness at hearing his words. Unable to hold in her emotions, Tamamo smashed her lips against his. Naruto fell back, caught off guard by the amount of emotions he could feel in the kiss. Tamamo fell on top of him as he felt her tongue explore his mouth. As lust overtook both of them, the rest of their clothes joined the ground as they lost themselves in the pleasure the other provided. Naruto hummed softly. He was laying on the bed, naked as the day he was born. Laying on top of him was the sweaty form of Tamamo, clad in only her blue stockings. She wore a content smile as she purred softly from his hands which were combing through her tail. Hey Tamamo, the fox girl hummed softly upon hearing her same, her head tilting slightly upwards, prompting him to continue. I'm thinking about visiting the underworld sometime soon. His words made her perk up, a questioning expression on her face as she wondered where that came from. She knew he didn't want to go back there, as he had stated several times during conversations they had. Why? Well, I have this feeling, like something bad is going to happen. I'm not sure how to explain it, to be honest. It's just this nagging feeling I have in the back of my head, and I just need to make sure the underworld won't do anything if something were to happen. I'm still too valuable of a person for the underworld to lose, and I don't want them to accuse any other factions if something were to happen. I understand. Are you going alone? Naruto glanced down at her before shaking his head. No, you will be going with me. In fact, I want you to go with me so I can laugh in the face of the elders if we run into them. He chuckled lightly as he could already envision how that would play out. Won't they try anything? She mumbled, concerned. Naruto scoffed and growled. I'll dare them to try. With me there with you, there's nothing to worry about. They're mostly talk anyway, and you should just ignore whatever they say like I do. He laughed, and she joined in with her own giggles. Okay. When will we be leaving? Her question successfully stopped his laughter. He removed his hands from her tail and began rubbing her back as he was busy thinking, not really hearing the soft moans she released. Not sure really. He rolled her over so she was now laying on her side facing him. I guess as soon as we're done here? Or do you want to go somewhere beforehand? Tamamo shook her head before leaning into him, and he pulled her into an embrace. I'm fine with leaving when you want, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled and nodded. That's good for now, let's just lay like this for a while, okay? We should have a couple of hours before meeting Amaterasu and Inari for dinner. Tamamo didn't reply, though he felt her rest her head against his chest and her hands placed against his stomach. He leaned his head down slightly and kissed her ears as they twitched in response. Sighing softly as he felt her breathing slower, he proceeded to shut his eyes as well, just for a little while. Twitch, twitch, twitch. Can't you stop it already? He asked finally after minutes of enduring their stares and large smiles which made both him and Tamamo uncomfortable. Ma, are you embarrassed, Naruto-chan? Inari asked with a shy-teasing grin on her face. His eye twitched once more, though this time much more violent at how she addressed him. Naruto-chan? Heh, she's lucky he enjoyed her company, or else he would have walked off by now. Instead he settled for sighing deeply as his head impacted the table they were sitting at. The sound earned them a few curious looks from other guests, more than they already did that were there, though nobody said a thing. Tamamo merely patted his shoulder as a sign of support. Thank you, Tamamo. I see you understand my pain. He sat back up and leaned over, sharing a quick kiss with the vixen, who whimpered softly as he broke off, though he let her rest her head on his shoulder. From the corner of his eyes he noticed a few of the men watching them send a glare in his direction. No doubt part of the yokai who held the belief their race should not mingle with those not their own. Devils especially. He wondered if they knew just who he was, how quickly they would sing another tune, but meh. He cared less for them than they did for him, and he would let them. As long as they wouldn't bother Tamamo, he couldn't be less interested in what their opinion on him was. Anyway, he looked at both Amaterasu and Inari. Once we're done here, Tamamo and I will be heading to the underworld to take care of some business. His words earned two shocked looks from the woman sitting opposite of him and Tamamo. The underworld? I thought you were going to stay away from there for as long as you could. Naruto nodded his head at Inari's words. You are correct, but these past few days I've been getting this feeling that something big is going to happen. I don't know what or when, but I can safely say that something will happen. Us going to the underworld is mostly to make sure that should anything indeed happen, the underworld isn't going around accusing other factions of doing something they don't. It wouldn't do anybody any good if another war broke out due to false allegations. I see you thought this over. Amaterasu butt in, receiving a nod from him in return. Yep, it took a while to admit it to myself, but I eventually settled on it being the wisest choice of the ones available that favored both myself and Tamamo. He stopped speaking as he noticed Tamamo and Inari sniffed the air before the former straightened herself. He rose an eyebrow but didn't say anything, for soon his nose was assaulted by the smell of food, no doubt the reason for Tamamo's sudden movement. Glancing to the source, he saw a young woman walking around, carrying several plates with food which she put down in front of the hungry customers. He smirked lightly as he spotted her, narrowed her eyes at a single customer who was a bit more hands-on than required. Eventually she made her way to their table and served them their food. Amaterasu's face held a small smirk as she saw Tamamo send the young woman a narrow-eyed glare, having caught her staring a bit too long at Naruto for her liking. Hey, can I ask something else? Naruto spoke between bites. Seeing he was looking at her, Amaterasu nodded her head, indicating he could speak. When we were walking to Kurama's office earlier today, I noticed a young girl spying on us. Any idea who she is? She had blonde hair much like my own, though a few shades darker, and eyes much like Tamamo's. Aside from that, I saw she had fox ears and several tails behind her. How much I don't know, but I managed to make out at least 3 of them. Amaterasu hummed a bit as she swallowed a mouthful of food before speaking. This girl, did she look any older than 12, 13? Seeing him shake his head negatively, she nodded herself. Ah, her. She's a young Kitsune yukai called Yasaka. Not a whole lot is known as Kurama keeps her protected, but what I can tell you is that her parents both died early in her life, and is now raised by Kurama. Interesting. He mused, satisfied by the information she provided. They finished the rest of their dinner in mostly silence. The only exception being the small chatter that happened when Inari brought up certain topics about him, which he answered with ease. Today was the day. Today he and Tamamo would go to the underworld for the first time in over a decade. They had spent a couple more days here just enjoying Kyoto in general. Honestly, it would be a nice place to live for a while if it wasn't for the blatant racism shown by the yokai that lived here. Even with Kurama around, who had insisted on getting to know them better, did little to stop their words. And while he wasn't really bothered by their words, he couldn't say the same for Tamamo. He had seen the hurt flash across her eyes whenever they would call her names. When they called her a betrayer of their race for being intimate with the devil of all beings. It had taken a lot of self-control and Tamamo telling him to ignore them to not hurt them. While he conceded with her pleading, it didn't mean he did not give Kurama the same treatment. Oh no, not at all. He and the Kyoto leader had exchanged several words. Most of them were him telling him to make sure to keep a leash on his people. His words weren't received well though, as Kurama had responded by flaring his aura. Had he been a high-class devil or some other yokai, he would probably be shivering upon the feeling of danger the nine-tailed yokai radiated. But he was not. He was Naruto Bale, a devil of unparalleled power capable of reducing Kyoto to ashes with a mere flick of his fingers. He had fought the heavenly dragons themselves, and no yokai, Kyuubi or not, would intimidate him, ever. So when Kurama tried using his power in an attempt to intimidate him, he had quickly let him know what he thought of that by showing him a glimpse of his true power, as he had teleported the two to an abandoned valley surrounded by mountains. Or used to, at least, as with a casual snap of his fingers he had conjured up a magic seal big enough to fit the mountain inside before it fired down a thick beam of his clan's famous power. A single, large explosion later accompanied by an earthquake, and gone was the mountain along with the surrounding area, which was at least several miles in diameter. The casual display of power that was capable of wiping a village of the map was enough to let Kurama know that this new version of Naruto was not one he could mess with. It was quite ironic in a certain way though, as he wondered what were to happen were he to ever regain his memories. Gone was the young loudmouth and cocky boy he could instill fear in with just his aura alone. The roles were reversed this time around, much to his slight annoyance, yet there was also a part of happiness in him seeing Naruto again. He had felt bad for the boy during the time he had been sealed inside of him. While he didn't show it, he knew firsthand the boy's life was harder than it should have been. It was just that his past interactions with humans, or at least a certain Uchiha, had made him hate every one of them, and he was not going to play nice just to see if this one was any different. Though having said that, even he was silently impressed with how the boy had never given up, to the point that it had cost him his life regardless of the attempts he made to heal the boy back up. Perhaps it would have been different had he succeeded in keeping the boy alive. But it was just a possibility, however. It wasn't set in stone, and he could have turned out like the rest of them. A power-hungry fool who only sees him as a mindless beast and not the intelligent being he truly was. Though Kurama couldn't say he wasn't pleased with how it had turned out. When he had reformed, he immediately knew something was wrong. That something being that no longer was he a massive orange-furred nine-tailed fox. No, instead he was a human, or at least so in appearance, with 9 tails and fox ears on his head. He was pleased to find out his strength hadn't diminished a single bit regardless of the new form he had. No longer was he a being filled with hatred conjured up from several centuries of being subjected to the words and actions of humans to his kind. While he still had the aura that radiated malevolence and death to his enemies and demanded respect to those serving under him, it wasn't an unconscious thing anymore. In his place was the new him, who was a leader, a being of hope and power to his own species. Yokai of all kinds looked up to him, wanted to be him. He understood now. He understood why Naruto wanted to be Hokage despite the hatred he endured. His current position even lessened the hatred he felt for the boy's father, or previous father at least, when the man had sacrificed himself in order to seal him away so he could stop the destruction he had caused. The reason he hadn't completely forgiven the man was due to him taking half of his power into the Shinigami when he had summoned the deity. But aside from that, and after all that he has done and experienced as Kyoto's yokai leader, he would do the same thing as Minato had done to secure the village's safety. Even up to the point of sacrificing himself to make sure they were safe. For Naruto, being near Kurama in general made his brain hurt, even if only a little. It was like he had met the man before, but he knew 100% sure the meeting they had during their stay was the first time he had seen the man. It didn't stop the stinging feeling he felt in the back of his head every now and then. What was worse though was that Kurama did in fact seem to know him, at least that is what he could come up with seeing the yokai's body language. During their first meeting with Amaterasu and Inari, he could sense the man felt relieved upon seeing him yet shocked at the same time, like they were old friends who heard the other had died only to show up weeks later looking better than ever. At the time he didn't think much of it, writing it off as being mistaken for somebody else, but when Kurama had insisted on getting to know both himself and Tamamo better, the feeling returned. Despite that, he still acted like his usual self, or at least tried to, as Tamamo could tell something was bothering him and confronted him about it later that day. Tamamo was also the reason Naruto acted more guarded than usual around him. Kurama had shown a lot of interest in his Kitsune companion. While most questions weren't out of the ordinary, such as where and how they met, or if they were really a couple, some other questions were a bit more personal to ask to someone you hadn't met for longer than a day. He was pleased though when Tamamo had politely told the QB she didn't feel comfortable answering such questions for the short time they knew each other, and Kurama seemed to accept that. The QB could see how much they cared for another and felt happy for both of them. This new Naruto wasn't anywhere as dense when it came to the opposite sex as his other self. He wondered what was happening with those girls back in Konoha, if they were still alive that is. While he had been alive for over a century here in this world and so had Naruto from knowing just who he was, he didn't know if time passed here at the same rate as it did where he came from. For all he knows, only a week could have passed in the elemental nations. That Hyuga girl that had shown an unhealthy amount of interest in his former jailer was the first that came to mind. While she wasn't a bad choice and had Naruto survived that day, and he was still inside of him, he wouldn't mind seeing the two get together. Even if the girl was a bit too meek for his liking, Naruto, not used to female interactions, had no such thoughts. Though he still didn't quite see where the girl's infatuation with Naruto came from, as he couldn't recall even a single conversation Naruto had with the Hyuga girl. What did the Hyuga girl expect to happen? That she would profess her love for him and he would immediately return it despite having spoken no more than a couple words here and there? Bah, perhaps if this was one of those bad love stories it might gone that way. Then there was that pink-haired girl, Sakura. God may know what his former jailer saw in that girl. He did wonder if he had a thing for pink, as Tamamo too had pink hair, though hers was more peach pink whereas Sakura's was bright pink to the point it was almost an eyesore. That's not even mentioning that she seemed to love punching the boy for no apparent reason whatsoever, only to come crying in the end when the Uchiha had deserted the village. Bah, bunch of weaklings. Yeah, the old Naruto's track record with girls definitely wasn't something to be proud about. Which why he was surprised to see him with someone like Tamamo who appeared to be completely adored with him. Though hearing that he had saved her from death by killing several thousand men could do that to a girl. Kurama also asked him how he ended up as a bodyguard of someone like Amaterasu of all people. Naruto explained how she, on Tamamo's insistence, had saved him after a scuffle with the two heavenly dragons during the last period of the Great War. The fact that he mentioned that, and was still alive, was just another testament to Naruto's power, which have surpassed his own by bounds. It did make him somewhat curious though what it was that Naruto, Sirzechs and Ijuka had that differentiated them from the rest. Each of the three was just over a century old, yet have all achieved a level of power not seen before by any devil. Even the original Satans didn't come close to the power the three held. Naruto had merely replied with a shrug, as he didn't know either nor that he really cared. He knew Kurama wasn't the only one who was wondering about that. Knowing Azazel after the trashing he gave him during the war, he had little doubt the man was using his blood to see what made him stand out above the dozen other devils born. He wouldn't put it past the elders to attempt something either. They were probably testing 24/7 to see if they can manually inject someone with one of their blood in hopes of creating a devil of their power that actually listens to what they have to say. Somewhat of a frightening thought should it somehow work out, but enough of that. It's time to return to the main story. Kurama stood at the gate separating Kyoto from the rest of Japan. Flanking his sides were several guards, each armed to the teeth. Not that it mattered much though, as if a fight broke out it wouldn't do much aside from slow them down. Standing opposite of them were Amaterasu and Inari with Naruto, and Tamamo holding hands as it was time to leave. Amaterasu, with the help of Inari, had finally finalized the arrangements that satisfied both the Shinto faction and Kyoto equally. Neither goddess had said it out loud, but they did imply that Kurama was quite the negotiator. Once more I thank you for coming by. It's been a pleasure seeing both of you again. He gave a light bow before turning to Naruto and Tamamo. Same goes for both of you as well. Despite the less than pleasant comments thrown your way, I'm thankful nothing bad happened. The two reciprocated his gesture with a bow of their own. Thank you, we might return once people are less. He trailed off, but Kurama understood what he was implying and nodded his head. The blatant racism Yukai showed was something he was going to work on soon. Clapping his hands together, he addressed the group. Very well, it's been nice seeing each of you, and I wish you a pleasant day, and I look forward to seeing you again. Oh! Naruto suddenly exclaimed, getting everyone's attention. He looked back at Kurama as his expression shifted into a serious one. You never told me what your connection is to that symbol you have in your office. Kurama just smiled. Maybe I'll tell you next time you come by. I doubt you have time to listen to me speak for a while. He threw a jab in there, much to his own amusement. Rolling his eyes, he nodded his head nonetheless, as he felt Tamamo increase the hold she had on his hand, and looked at his girlfriend. Yes, I know, it's time. Releasing a deep sigh, the couple waved Amaterasu and Inari goodbye as a teleportation circle belonging to the Bales clan formed beneath their feet. Don't forget to see us when you two are done. Inari could be heard as the magic circle glowed brightly before the glow dissipated and they were done. Gazing at the spot the two previously were, Amaterasu breathed softly before sparing Kurama one last look as they too disappeared. Seems like it hasn't changed a single bit. Came Naruto's voice the moment he stepped outside of the teleportation circle he had created. Actually, it seems like the sky is no longer purple, so I guess that counts for something. He shrugged uncaringly as Tamamo joined his side. Now Naruto-kun, do you have to be so pessimistic? Naruto scratched his cheek as he flashed her a smile. Sorry Tamamo, but you know how I feel about coming here. Tamamo gave a small nod as she moved herself closer to Naruto, who welcomed her gesture by wrapping an arm around her waist. Looking around, Naruto spotted some familiar buildings which helped him figure out where it was that the two of them exactly were, and if he was correct they were near Lusafad. Alright. Tamamo, whatever you do, keep close to me the entire time we will be here. Not many devils are used to yokai or anyone that isn't a member of our race here in the underworld for that matter. That plus the fact that you're beautiful and I wouldn't put some of those fools to try and get their hands on you. Luckily though, that's where I come in. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. Next to him, Tamamo felt the surrounding air around them shift as it became much more heavier though not unpleasant to her. Naruto breathed out slowly as he began to release an aura which spelled death, or something similar for those foolish enough to move close enough to them. Opening his eyes, he glanced to his side to see Tamamo was unbothered by the sudden change in his aura, which pleased him greatly. This should be enough to scare away even ultimate class devils, or at least make them wary and cautious of approaching. Satisfied with himself, Naruto and Tamamo stepped out of the alleyway they had appeared in and entered the street. A small smile formed on his face as he spotted the glances sent their way the moment the two had entered the same street they were all walking on. He was also happy their eyes went on him and not Tamamo, or else he had to increase the intensity of it. He wasn't jealous, he just didn't appreciate lustful looks sent his girlfriend's way. She was his and only he got to look at her like that.